stuff happening there.
I would like to add the Spirit Week rankings. So this week is Spirit Week for the high school. So first place is sophomores with 560 points. Second place is seniors with 485 points. Third place is freshmen with 320 points. And fourth place is juniors with 280 points. So if you are a parent or a citizen watching at home, help out your seniors. Drop off some clothes in the front office or some canned goods. We really got to push through. We got to finish strong. The sophomores are really kicking our butts, so please help support the seniors this year. Thank you.
Shameless plug.
Thank you. All right, next is public comments. I'm going to read our statement on public comments. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. While the committee and/or administrators will not typically respond during public comment, the chair, as presiding officer of the meeting, may choose to if she deems it expeditious. Further, should the chair believe that an issue falls outside the purview of the school committee, she may request the citizen direct it to the appropriate person or body so that the matter is given proper consideration. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and a total of 15 minutes overall. Are there any public comments? Yep, go ahead. And please just say your name and street address.
Yes, please.
Yes, and just so I don't have to verbally interrupt you, I set a 3-minute timer if you hit it. Okay, thank you.
And Carol, can you hear me?
Yes.
33.
The microphone is for folks at home,
Okay.
more so than for us.
33 Upper River Road. This is about the one school, two school proposal for Winthrop and Joanne. I have been following this for a very long time. I am a product of small schools. I went to Winthrop. My kids benefited from Winthrop. My parents taught at Winthrop. I feel deeply passionate about it. And I haven't been able to come to every meeting, but I know that there was a vote at the last meeting about moving a proposal forward, and I read that the optics of it, to me, within terms of the public process, I was a little bit disappointed because it seemed like some information came to light that wasn't fully vetted. Now, I should have said what I meant to say to start was thank you all, because I know how much this takes to do this job, and I know how much time you spend. And so I know that I might be wrong, that you might have considered all these things and fully vetted them all. And I acknowledge that, but I guess what I'm asking is, I just want to say that I don't think it's realistic to expect the community to accept the school committee's recommendation of a single school at Joanne unless you can provide the following data for review, which is basically the cost comparison of the single school versus two schools in the present custom design model, and then how both those options would compare to the cost when you're using the model school method that was provided. And maybe that's been done, or maybe that will be done, but I feel very strongly, I understand that cost is a critical overriding factor. I don't think it should be the only thing, but I do understand that it probably has to be the number one thing. And in speaking with my good friend, Jim Engel, I may be wrong, but I just really want to make sure that that's carefully evaluated. Because anything that can be done to preserve our ability to have small schools, I would like to see that happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Canceling my timer. Okay, any other public comments? Okay. Next item. Switching it up.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not. Just kidding. Jumped ahead. It is the community presentation on the field house and potential vote on extending the Payne grant. And we welcome the Synthetic Turf Advisory Committee, Phase 2.
Thank you. My name is Ken Swenson, 449 Limewood Road. I'm here to give an update to this school committee on the Synthetic Turf Advisory Committee. It was alive and well for several years. Did lots of good work, built things. We were cruising along to do this phase 2, and then we were asked to halt. So we went dormant for a while. We got reestablished last May, and here's an update to you guys. Basically, the project summary.
Should we move the mic?
Originally, conceived, it was 3 phases. First phase was to convert the stadium field from grass to artificial surface, to redo the track, put up a scoreboard, do a bunch of other things. The second phase was to design and build an additional building at the stadium. There already was one building that was actually built. I coordinated that years ago when the lights got put on 15 years ago or so. And the third phase is to rehab the Joy on athletic fields. That was the way it was originally conceived, and that's the project summary. As far as the project status, the phase one was the field was done, put into service in September 2016. Actually finished the punch list by spring of 2017. Phase two we embarked on right away. We hired engineering consultants. They designed something for us. We had a 3,000 square foot building all designed. It's going to cost out at about $1.5 million. We didn't get this far to actually get it bid out and had contractors ready to go. But in 2019, that school committee asked us to stop work on that because we didn't want to have mixed messages for the coming school operational override, which was eventually passed in 2022. So in May of last year, we reinitiated the synthetic turf advisory committee. Said, okay, let's see if we can get this thing built. So I basically contacted all the former members. Some rejoined. We got new people. Three sitting here: Barry Hocking, Chuck Whitten, and Hilo Flynn. We also have Ted Spinelli, Joe Wright. We have Jen Donahue sitting on the committee with us, and Dr. Blake and Tom Gallagher too. And then the Doyon Fields project, that rehabilitation was basically stopped when the school committee was considering building a school over there, because it made no sense to put money in athletic fields if you guys were actually going to put a school there. And, we had that vote, we lost the vote, but still biggest potential in play. But we're not doing anything with that now. We have preliminary designs for that. Didn't bid anything out, but we're not working on that at all. Over the years, I did write main grant applications, and were granted several. The first one, 2015, we used that to pay for the engineering and design of the phase one, 2 and 3, and that was the paying grant. The next 3 years, 16, 17, and 18, I put in for money towards the phase 2 project. That's this building. Somewhere around after 18, we were told there was a change in thought and that I shouldn't try to apply for any more paying grants because they weren't going to be accepted or granted or whatever. So we stopped. When the committee reconvened last May, we talked and decided we should try to put another paying grant in because we still were short funds to complete the building, but we weren't so far away that we couldn't try. So I put a paying grant application in last March, and last May was granted $150,000. This sheet, the next, I basically cut and pasted off of the paying grant report, because when you do paying grants, you usually have to put a status report of what's going on. I wanted this school committee to know where we were, who were the actors that were doing it, the fact that the synthetic turf advisory committee was a subcommittee of the school committee. It actually was, I was going down through memory lane looking at all the minutes from 2015, 16, 17, 18. And this committee was a standing report almost every school committee meeting. And then in 2019 it stopped because obviously we stopped based on guidance from the school committee. Next slide, please. That phase one that has been completed, like I said, we had $132,000 for a paying grant. We had $600,000 donation from the Institute for Savings. And the town of Ipswich floated a bond of $1 million that was paid out of the budget. The total was $1.7 million. Phase two, we did hire the same company that designed the stadium. They started doing the design for the building, and that's who did the 3,000 square foot building that we did preliminary cost of $1.5 million. Next slide, please. Said the phase 3 we're on permanent hold. This is a picture of the current site. The one on the left is looking down from towards the existing concession stand, and the one on the right is our porta johns. This is the proposed plan for the new site. Basically, the new building is here. The existing building is here. Part of running water, there is water in School Street, but we needed a way to do septic. The health department wasn't keen on having on-site septic, so they said we had to tie it into the school. So this red line shows the path of how that line would go, and it ties into the school.
That's because there's no sewer.
There's no sewer on School Street, right?
When was this design, with this pipeline drawn? Because I know there's a basketball court there. Right now, I don't know if it's drawn on, but I know there's an outdoor basketball
Yeah.
court area now.
Right.
All new.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep. The building basically footprint is basically you have athletic team rooms, you have restrooms, and you have basically these two smaller things are training rooms because it felt it was important to have local assets for dealing with kids with injuries and things.
You put into the, those are handicap restrooms. In the team rooms, there are two, those are handicap restrooms.
Oh, sorry.
In the
right
team
here.
rooms, there are two
Right here,
little
right
training
here.
areas.
Thank you.
So
Right
you can
here.
tape ankles, and Kelly can go out there and fix people.
Yep. Here's a picture of what it would look like from the northern side or the side from the field, if you're standing on the field looking at it. Basically, the finish is similar to the building that's there. That's the end view. Basically, this is the side that would be facing the stands. So we have a concession stand window, door access, and places to fill up water bottles. This would be the other side, basically the side facing Wedgens Field, and this would be the side facing School Street. And here's an isometric view of that. I support this project. Current bathroom facilities, we have a portable. We did a survey, actually Tom Gallagher did the survey for us. And the surrounding schools that our kids play at, 92% of them had bathrooms accessible. Some were built like this right next to the field, and others, the field construction was close enough to the school that school said would give people access to the bathrooms inside the school. Ours are a little far for that. The football boosters with financial assistance from the IEF did an upgrade to the concession stand that's there. That concession stand was actually put there in the mid-2000s when the lights were put on and we built the initial building. That was all done off budget with donated funds. I was actually the volunteer project guy on that one too. But that, when we first put that thing down there, we did wire to it, but there's no running water back then. There's still no running water. But they did upgrade it to the point where it complied with the health department. So it's better, but still not where we want it. And the last thing is, since the inception of the FEFI Trust, all the grants that I've applied for these projects, basically there was more money that were offered to the school than there had grants for. First time, I think correct me if I'm wrong, not like last spring was the first time where we had more grant requests and we had funds allocated from the FEFIs. My last thing is to request an extension for the time to use the last paint grant. Last spring, the school committee granted $150,000 towards my request, but they put an added requirement and we spend the money within 12 months. Well, 12 months from the grant date means we have to spend it by May 31st or June 1st of next year. And the current plan is to install a forced main sewer line between where the building would get it and all the way to the school building. The current path would take it across the practice field, what's been the practice field for years, and now it's going to be a new varsity softball field. And we never impact ongoing school activities for construction. Like when we did the turf field conversion, that was all done in the summertime. We took it apart basically the week after the last sports team used that field and had it ready for the following fall and the first football game. So similarly on this, we want to put this force main in next summer sometime, July or August, and that way we wouldn't be impacting the anticipated softball team using that field. That's it. Questions? For anybody on our committee?
So essentially, what I'm hearing is that you're, in addition to updating the school committee on the status of the project, you need permission to extend that grant.
Yes.
That's sort of the ask, is
I'm assuming that the requirement is a formal requirement that got put by the school committee, so I guess in order to get relief from that, we have to formally request relief from that you guys have to deliberate and at some point vote on it.
And I can give some background on the school committee's stance in the day. So we were. Okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Don't give them a microphone.
No, brother. Set your timer,
So I
Diane.
can give you some background. Obviously, the three of us were on school committee for parts of this whole project. So in the day, the first time we delayed for the consideration of construction was when the cost of that building looked high. So we had about $600,000 accrued from Ken's applying for paying grants and accumulating some money. And so we thought we'd be able to build this building in its previous form, which is about 30 feet longer with much bigger team rooms and a little more bells and whistles on it. But the cost came back at $1.5 million. That means we had a gap of funding of about $900,000, and we had to seek that funding. And so we went to Ipswich for Savings, and some other people participated, and they didn't have, at that time, that amount to donate, and they said, you got to come back with a much smaller project if we're going to do it all. At the same time, schools were going through a new school building project, and we thought that this ask for more money and all that would be a problem. At the time, so we put that in the back burner. In addition to that, we then ran into the school override calendar, and so we went for the operating override just a couple of years later, and that was going to run into that. So each time we kind of thought about bringing it back as a school committee, we decided to leave it on the back burner and just stay with the porta potties for a few more years. But if you've been around to surrounding districts in the last 5 or 10 years, what you've seen is a transformation of Cape Ann leaving surrounding school construction around stadiums and turf fields. And all the turf fields that have been built since ours was built have included very nice concession areas, very nice team rooms, and very nice restrooms along with their track and their turf field. So for us to meet the standard of the local area, I think it would be helpful to have that as a team doctor for many, many, many years. Not having ice nearby, Kelly has to haul it out for a game, not having running water nearby, not having the ability to have a private area to take kids' groins, to take kids' injuries, tape ankles, examine kids at halftime. There's none of that available in our field, whereas every place else has it. If you're taking a kid and who's had a significant injury, you want to get them off. It's always nice to be able to evaluate them somewhere where they can be talked to. And for a coach, in November having a high school football game, and it's 20 degrees outside, and there's nowhere to go to warm up or to fans to go to the bathroom. It would be a nice thing to have. What we've done in this phase is we've taken a $1.5 million project and shrunken it to a $950,000 project, of which we have $750 available, so $750,000 available for funding. So we're close to what we need. And there are multiple ways we could seek that remaining funding, and we'll deal with that later. But, one could be more paying, one could be seeking institutional savings or other local people to support us, another could be fundraising. In IEF, at the time we did the first phase, was very interested in doing the fundraising piece. Education Foundation had an unfortunate scandal around that time and was temporarily disbanded and reformed. And so that also impacted our ability to fundraise. So there's a lot of little history to it, but the big picture is we need a building out there. We need restrooms, we need team rooms, and we've got a fair amount of funding for it. We want to start the phase that gets it rolling. We'd love to spend the money this year, but if we could delay it till the summer, it would just help.
I'll just reiterate, I'm the liaison for this committee, and I've watched it since it restarted again, and I've watched the tear down of the building, and I also have just been so impressed with the dedication to getting this done, finally, after, the start way back in 2015. So I've communicated at our meetings here, just updates, but this committee really wants to be able to break ground, but when we voted on the pain grants last spring, and I believe it was 140 that was granted to this project at the last round of the pain grants, we spoke quite a bit about, well, the money's been sitting there for quite some time, and we need to get going, and so we kind of put the stipulation in that $140,000 needs to be spent. So I've watched this committee say, well, how are we going to do that without disrupting students and breaking ground and wanting to get started? And there's a lot of good contractor knowledge on this committee, and it just seems that in order to get it going and have the least amount of disruption for the students, that the $140,000 isn't going to be spent by May, but it just needs an extension so that it can actually get going. So that's why they're here tonight.
Over here.
Yeah, I did. I was curious. I had a question, but since Jen said that, actually, I thought of how long did they take to use the previous pain grant? That we needed to have, like, it needs to be used within 12 months. Like, do you know how long? Do you know how long?
Well, for the other paying grants we've accumulated, there's no limit on those. They've been sitting in the
Okay.
fund for a long time.
Okay, so there were no limits, but like,
Those are earmarked.
but they just felt like that it was too long for them to not spend it, right? That's why we put in the year?
Yes, that's.
Okay.
I think, too, we were kind of moving that way in general with.
Yes,
paying grants
yes,
as part of
yep.
the new policy, just so that, but with the caveat being that larger projects are bound to run into some problems, and that
Yeah.
if this thing goes over, that they would just need to come back and
Yeah.
ask us for permission to extend that.
Yeah.
Which I think, for me, this fits perfectly within the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this is a perfect reason to extend it, being that it can really only be done in the summertime. So, to me, that makes sense.
How long of an extension do they need? Is it
Couple
definitely?
months, just through the summer.
We haven't talked about the project a lot. I thought this was terrific. In particular, it stands out to me. One is the parity. Like, this isn't a luxury. This finishes a project, but it's also very much in line with what other districts have done. And in particular, the safety and the health aspect of it. This isn't just adding a snack shack. There's a lot more to it, so that's important. Maybe a question for Tom, but just procedurally, what does it look like for us to approve enabling them to extend the period in which they have to spend money?
So that's at the committee's, your discretion.
Sure.
So it's really not a procedural issue.
Okay.
The pain grants, they have a life to them that goes along with whatever the project is. Now, typically, it is spent within, 12 months or so, but something that has, a life to it over the course of years, as this one does, by the very nature of it, the money is really, being accumulated in the fund.
I think the concern too about having the money not spent, if it needs to sit, but it's been removed from the account and earmarked, then it's not accruing interest. So if we had it back in the account, accruing interest in the meantime until we can spend it, that was sort of part of the thinking around it as well, right? In terms of it going back if it hadn't been spent. So I mean,
there is only
I
one
don't think that would
fund.
apply if we're talking about a couple months, right? Like we're losing a minimal amount of interest within that period of time.
Yeah.
I did have one more question too, though, about the remaining, so it's about 200,000 remaining that needs to be fundraised, is that right?
That's our estimation. We haven't done a final cost estimate.
So if we proceed with this part, which is essentially just putting in the pipe, right, then is there a goal or a timeline set for fundraising that remaining piece so that we can proceed with them?
Yeah. The hope is that we do the construction on the building the following summer, and in the meantime, there are a number of routes we can pursue: private fundraising, going to one big donor, or seeking another pain grant or two in that kind of sinking fund idea that we could accumulate the funds in a public way through an existing fund that we can depend on. We're not great fundraisers, we're great construction people and sports fans, but the fundraising piece is not our strong suit. Sorry about that.
Repeat it. No, I'm kidding.
I have a question, and I apologize if I missed it. What is the cost of just the pipe? Is it 140?
We haven't,
Chubb?
my name's Chubb Whitten. How are
Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't bid it yet, so let's talk about the schedule for a second. Ultimately, we'd like to put the pipe in underneath the field this summer. And to answer Charlie's question, we're redesigning the pipe around that new basketball court. We're getting our plans probably within the next 30 to 45 days. We've got to check on that today to see where we're at. We'll bid it over the first 3 months of the winter, starting January 1, and be ready to go at the end of the school year. Because we don't want to put machinery in the middle of the school year to make it within the 12-month period. And one thing that really hasn't been mentioned, we redesigned the building with some really good charitable Ipswich designers. Larry Graham has done the sewer work, he's doing that pro bono. His office engineers get paid, he doesn't get paid for it, as well as Ken Savoy. So it's really got a nice Ipswich flair to it. When these gentlemen are putting their time and effort in the project as well as here. So it's been really, really good to push that way. Thank you.
I want to follow up, and I don't know if it's a question for you or for Tom, but if, where we don't, and I couldn't guess what this is going to cost, but if it comes in higher than 140, then I assume you would tap into the funding that you have. And if it's lower than, like say it's 100, you'd put that 40 back in, okay.
So out of the 140, there is outside structural engineers, there's a bid package writer, and there is some engineers on the pump and the line is coming, the sanitary line to get to hook into the sewer. So that's roughly 26 and 8. So that's $38,000 that we'll spend. So that's, we'll have a balance of 110. And
Oh, okay.
there's an EDC line going in as well. There's a pump station with a macerator. So there's a little bit of infrastructure going in. There's 2 water lines and 1 water line and 1 electric line going into it as well. That comes right off School Street. So there's probably going to get spent on that.
Okay, thank you. Right, any other questions or discussion? Open to a motion?
Move the school committee approve the extension of the time available to spend the Payne Grant Award through the end of the 2025 calendar year.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Sasha, second by Jen. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you for all
your
your
time.
work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, it's exciting.
Yeah, very
Thank you for all your
exciting.
work
Yeah.
getting that done.
Thank you.
Finally. Thank you.
Right. Now, it is your turn. Superintendent's administrative report.
So if folks haven't noticed, we didn't point out earlier this evening, we sort of shuffled the deck a little bit on our agenda and how the meeting is laid out. So we're trying a new format just to try to make things a little bit more efficient as we go through our school committee meetings. So we have some different things going on tonight, and we may continue or even change things up in the future depending on how this goes. So it's been quite a while since our last meeting, I think 3 weeks. So our last full, it was a full 3 weeks ago now. The day after our last meeting, I had a regional special education meeting that I attended with Eric Oxford, our new director. We're working with our regional partners to look for ways that we can make things more efficient in terms of our special education service delivery. We have a lot of similar programs with our students having similar needs, and we're looking to see if there's ways that we can perhaps, organize our programming a little bit differently so that, we can make all of our programs more efficient and just better run for all of the kids in the region. So this was our initial meeting, and we hope to be able to see beneficial outcomes by the end of the year. During our admin team meeting, we debriefed the student crisis response, reviewed the Twig Fall cycle grant applications that had come in, and we talked about the mandated trainings and a variety of contract issues now that the contracts are settled. Tom and I were happy, silent participants in the special town meeting. It was an interesting evening, to say the least. The North Shore Education Consortium held its monthly board meeting on the 23rd. As part of the opioid settlement agreement here in Ipswich, the town offered town employees training on the use of Narcan in the case of an overdose in any of our public buildings. Laura and I attended from the central office as well as other administrators from the district. And as part of that training, you actually receive Narcan to keep with you. And then we have, as part of that program, Narcan cabinets are being installed in each of the town buildings. We'll have one in central office as well that will be readily accessible. But there's a law on the books that if it's in a school, it has to be locked up, and only the nurses are supposed to be able to administer it unless you have your own. Like, so if I had it in my pocket and needed to administer it to someone, I could, but the nurses are the only ones that are supposed to do it in a school. So those Narcan boxes will be put up in each of the nurses' offices in the district, but they will be behind a locked door. Let's see. They paid for the training, the opioid settlement paid for the training. There's actually another training coming up that I will start advertising in my weekly update tomorrow for all community members. That's available. It's in a couple of weeks, I believe. And it's at the town hall. They provide the training. They'll provide Narcan for the folks at the training, and Ipswich Aware is actually helping to sponsor it, and we'll be providing lunch. Hear more about that in my weekly update tomorrow. We had a meeting with the AFSCME clerical unit to discuss the new position that we're looking to do at central office. Later that day, we successfully negotiated the food service contract. We received word just this afternoon that the food service unit did ratify that contract, so that was good news to hear. Operations Subcommittee met to review the draft goals that will be presented this evening. On Friday, the 25th, I attended the North Shore Superintendent's Roundtable. We had a discussion / venting session about contract negotiations and frankly, the difficult spot that it puts superintendents in, and the lack of support that we get from DESI around negotiations and working with the bargaining units. We're very fortunate that we've settled our contracts. As you heard, there was a strike vote taken in Beverly and Gloucester. We knew that was coming. On Monday, October 28th, John Mitchell and I attended and participated in an active shooter response training in conjunction with the Ipswich Police and Fire Departments, as well as numerous other agencies. The training took place at the old Amesbury Elementary School, and so it was a full-scale training for us, where we got to either observe or participate as as one of the actors in it, or work on our own emergency response protocols, which is what we did, setting up a command center and working through the different pieces of that. Very well done by NEMLEC and other agencies. The Wellness Committee met twice to continue working on our wellness policy. This evening, we met with our coach from Fitchburg State. As you know, I was able to enroll us in a program with Fitchburg State around wellness committees and wellness policies. Happy to report that tonight, in meeting with the coach, she was very impressed with our policy and the work that's gone into it. It's in really good shape, and we have a couple of edits to make, but really, we had all of the requisite sections in there. She liked the way it was laid out, so we'll go through as a committee and make the necessary additions, and then bring it back to her. Now that negotiations are over, I'm back to meeting monthly with the IEA leadership. We're in the process of ironing out some of the lingering questions regarding the new contracts and when certain provisions take effect. There were some that were very clearly delineated in the contract when the effective date was. And of course, retroactive pay goes back to the beginning of the school year, but there's a lot of provisions in there and a lot of changes in how we do business that we, between the administration and the IEA, have to figure out, okay, when is this provision going to go start? And so we're discussing some of those issues now. The Budget Subcommittee and the Elementary Building Project Working Group also met. You'll be hearing reports from them earlier this evening. I also participated in a meeting with other town officials for the first meeting to update our hazard mitigation plan for the town. There'll be additional meetings coming up. We're still down a person in our business office, so I've been helping Tom with some of the tasks that are, that are left undone since Cindy left. We've settled the bargaining unit concern that the union had raised, and so the position's been posted, and we've got close to a dozen resumes or better now to review. So hopefully we'll get some interviews going in the next week or so when we get somebody in and started, by perhaps the 1st of December. Tom and I haven't talked about that, but that's at least my hope. This week I have my monthly athletic meeting, a meeting for the EDP middle school program that we're trying to get off the ground. And then Monday night I also had the IAF meeting with Matt. We had our monthly DEI meeting yesterday with the students, went very well. And tomorrow I'm meeting with the tech director and the facilities director separately, and then together just to problem solve and looking at some of our systems and how we can perhaps streamline some of our software. And Laura will also be involved in that. And finally, just a quick update on the Winthrop classroom floor. We think we have it narrowed down that the water table and the drainage in that section of the building is not good. And so the concrete was actually wet underneath, and the water was coming up underneath. So I think we did the right thing by taking up the carpet and removing all the mastic. The floor is now dried out, and so we're going to be working with the contractor to seal it, put a waterproof seal down there, and then put tile down. And then we're going to have to look at, outside drainage as well to try to pull water away so that it's not coming up underneath.
Brian,
That
can I just ask
classroom
you
is still not usable.
just a quick question there? Overall, how much have we spent so far on the mitigation and sort of what do you anticipate going forward?
I
Even
don't,
just ballpark, do you have a sense of it?
I
I think if the
don't.
answer is no, I'm just
Yeah,
curious, like,
I don't.
significant investment
Yeah.
because of the age of it, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe for
And
another.
it's unfortunate because several of the rooms down in that end of the hallway, we just put the carpet down within the last 2
Yeah.
years.
That's part of why I asked, yep.
Yeah, all brand-new carpet, and, that was, I think there's also some, we did some landscaping out in that back corner that we're looking at potentially having to move to get everything away from the building. So to try to, anything that we can do to help, because we're going to be in that building for a while yet.
And I know it's unavoidable, but I
Yeah.
appreciate everything the staff has done to try to at least minimize the disruption to the students who are feeling it every single day.
Yeah, and I feel bad for the classroom teacher who's, been moved, and the art teacher who's been displaced. It's a lousy situation. And once we get this room sorted out, moving forward, we're gonna have to look at those other classrooms in that area and make sure that they're okay, and if we may end up in the same situation, having to pull up the carpeting that's there, take up the mastic, and then dry it out, seal it, and put the tile back down.
Continued cost associations and impact on learning.
Significant costs and impact on learning.
And, yeah, I don't know how long, I don't know if that's a problem you can fix the water table, or if it's a Band-Aid that will have to be
Yeah.
continued.
Is it just one classroom, or are they?
Well, right now, it's one classroom, but we have to keep an eye. It was the far back corner classroom. And so it was, that was the one that had the significant odor and the main concern, but there's also three other classrooms right next to it, and then classrooms across the hall. And it's that whole corner of the building that's,
Did you guys check to see if the other rooms' concrete was wet?
we haven't pulled up the carpet in those, but we don't have the odor issue or the concerns that we did in that room. Good question. Okay.
I have a quick question too about the active shooter training. The middle school and elementary school principals didn't attend that.
So there was different levels of the trainings, and so they attended other ones, but that day, John and I went. But everyone has experienced it.
And what did it go over just, because when we practice our drills at the high school, which we're going to bring up at our next school student advisory meeting, is that they're only done in the classrooms, but there's no drills for like athletic events or cafeteria.
Yep.
Or it's that new cover the different.
Yep, so we did, there were 3 different scenarios. I'm not going to get into the gory details, but one was a situation where there were no students in the building. It was just the staff in the building and voting, actually. And so you had a completely different dynamic there about who's in the building and where and those types of things. And then the other two scenarios did involve One involved students in the building, where the perpetrator was apprehended, and then the third scenario was where the perpetrator actually left the building, and so that set another whole different set of circumstances in motion. So it was interesting because it's when they do them, it's a full simulation with full entry,
Right.
and it's interesting because when we think about it, it's not just that initial response. I mean, those events go on for literally hours because the entire building is locked down, and you have secure entries and exits, and people coming and going that are scheduled, and it's all very, very much a controlled environment at that point.
Yeah.
And we think that it's done and over with, and you do what you need to do, but it's hours long event.
It's got to be emotional, too. I mean, like, to some degree, like,
Oh,
how
yeah,
heavy.
it's draining.
And
It's draining when you.
so sad that has to be done, but
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, but it also, it's good that you can go through it in
Yeah.
those situations and understanding each other's role. Like,
Yes.
I know what the police are gonna do when they get to a building. I know what the fire department is gonna do. I know what
Absolutely.
ambulances are gonna do.
Yep.
I know what my administrators and what I would have to do. You get to practice those things, which lousy that we have to do it, but
Right,
good that we do.
yeah.
Thank you. All right. So next, we're going to do our subcommittee working group and liaison reports. I'm going to run through real quick. Budget, I believe, met.
Yes.
Yes, budget met, we discussed several items. First was the calendar from last year and discussed what updates we might make. In general, we felt that the timing of it worked very well. If you remember from last year, we made significant accommodations to make sure we built in a really healthy review period at the beginning of the year for the public and for the boards. We felt in general we're in the right place, but we need some final dates from the town. So we're okay, but we're waiting for some information. We talked about how do we continue to make the budget discussions for ourselves, particularly with the administrative team, and then with the other boards, more productive. So we began some of those conversations. We'll continue on those going forward. We want to make sure that they are productive, informative, and that they're focused on the most important topics, so that we're ensuring we're setting aside the most amount of time for the topics that we really want to discuss. And how do we get ahead of that too? What can we prepare ahead of time where there are other opportunities to invite boards to other discussions to make sure they're aware of information? So began that, we'll continue that over the next few months. It was early, but thought it was a good one for us to pursue. We began discussing the override calculator, or how do we keep track of the school stabilization fund. That's a critical piece of our sort of multi-year budgeting. So discussed it, we're going to make the updates to it with this year's numbers. We'll review it in our next, or in an upcoming meeting, and then we'll bring it back here. It's an important thing. I want to make sure that everyone on the full school committee feels comfortable and is fluent in everything that's in there, and for some of us, it's new this year too, so we'll make sure we've got time for that here. Again, plenty of time before we get into that full budget season, but we're thinking ahead. We have a meeting coming up where we will discuss recommendations and direction that we as a school committee may want to give to the administrative staff as they're starting to move forward. So those are more broader strategic things that we are thinking about, things that we've discussed in the past have included how long we want to ensure that stabilization funds or override funds last for. So it's certain things like that. It is not line item specific. Let's make sure that we have the right amount of paint in the art room level. This is multi-year strategic planning. So that's the nature of the conversation. We're going to begin that next week, actually, but that'll be a broader conversation for us as the full school committee as well.
Thank you.
The one additional topic we had was around prior year invoices. I just want to check with Tom. Do you have that coming up to discuss as part of your report? I will. Nope, I'll save it for you. You got that one. So that was it for budget.
Awesome, thank you.
Fair enough.
Do mutual concerns meet?
Oh, I reached out, so I haven't heard back about scheduling a meeting, so looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. I don't know why I had to pull the microphone to say that.
And I think we got the good negotiations update, so more to
Yeah.
come on that. Okay. Operations we're going to discuss in a bit. Same with the elementary group, and any liaison reports or anything else I missed.
IEF met on Monday, and they continue their yeoman's work, leading and also kind of plugging holes where other projects may have not found success. They're in the process of trying to fundraise to try and continue that work, doing wonderful things like we saw earlier with the softball field and really kind of helping that project get across the goal line. So, yeah, they're trying to kind of brainstorm how they might go about that, but they remain committed to filling that role, I think, within the community, so.
Awesome.
The Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board is going to meet next Thursday, and want to bring this as a question. If anybody has suggestions on whether they know or heard of a concerning intersection where that's sort of closer to the school, where there's like, walking routes from the students. So just keep your ears open and let me know, and I'll report it back.
I can say right now the one in front of Dunkin' Donuts,
That-
in the gas station.
That was my
As a
first
kid,
one.
That was the biggest
Yep,
fear as a freshman. going
Yeah.
through that one. Even
Yeah.
middle school, that was like,
Sixth grader.
yeah.
yep. On the list, one of the top ones. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Charlie, you are up next with your student representative report.
Not much to report. School spirit is very high. It is Spirit Week. Seniors are anxious for senior privilege to start, which is when we can leave the school during our lunch and our blocks. Also, you can, Lincoln Bridge is going to be having meetings about that to move forward, where seniors can take last quarter, if they have passing grades, to pursue academic or employment outside of school or during school hours. The high school's first DECA club went to the State House today and met with DECA members from across the state, including the state advisor. We all got a tour of the Senate chambers and the House chambers, thanks to Senator Tarr's office. So that was a great trip for a few students and the advisor. So that was great.
Could you explain what DECA is for people listening who might not know?
Yeah, DECA is, it just started, so I'm one of the founding members of it, and it's about 20-something kids we have so far. And it's entrepreneurship and business focused, with marketing, sales, finance, public speaking, sports management, hospitality. There's a wide range of topics covered. And so as we're creating this chapter, we were invited to go to Boston. The students took the train in this morning, took the train back, and they met with, again, reps from across the state, from Western Mass, Southern Mass, near us. We're actually the only school in Cape Ann that I know of that did not have a DECA club. So it was very popular in other schools, but we're starting at this time, and yeah, so it's great.
And what does DECA stand for?
I do not know if that's
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, I was
I just Googled. You got it?
No, go ahead.
Distributive Education Clubs of America. It's a nonprofit organization that helps students prepare for careers in management, marketing, finance, and hospitality, as you already outlined.
Yeah, so it's great. It's a lot of fun. Are really nice people, and we're just getting off the ground. Big thanks to Mr. Shippen, a math teacher who helps run two other clubs, including investment club and math team. And he actually spent the whole day in Boston chaperoning kids, then came to school only to then chaperone the math meet that same night. So he does a lot for the kids. So shout out for him for doing all that.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, finance report.
Okay. Good evening. In your folders are a couple of reports to look at. And two of them are the standard monthly reports. First one, if you could, go to the fiscal 25 year-to-date budget report. We're 4 months plus into the budget year. Things are progressing well. There's a couple things that I'd like to call your attention to as a couple highlights. On pages 1 and 2, the first 2 pages, you may see a couple negative figures there, particularly around electricity for the Doyon and the Winthrop buildings. Just to call to your attention as a bit of a reminder that where you are seeing negative numbers on electricity and utilities, those are related to offsets that we have made as part of the fiscal '25 budget process. We have brought into the budget offsets that we will charge to the EDP account and to school food services. So we need to encumber the full cost of the service for the year, but as we close the year, we'll begin to draw down that and charge those costs off to either of those revolving funds. So I don't want you to see so early in the year some negative numbers without making that as a point. Next thing to draw to your attention is on page 21. The bottom section under the central offices for undistributed, fourth line down, professional salaries, you will see in the second column over under the column that's headed transfers and adjustments. There's been an adjustment to the positive of $231,809. That is the additional Chapter 70 funds that town meeting approved be supplementally appropriated to the budget for fiscal '25. So until there is a further discussion at some point in the year where to actually spend the additional $231,000, I asked the town to put it on the professional salary reserve line, which is held under the central office account. So our budget is now officially has been increased by the vote of town meeting. So our official budget number is now $39,848,212, because that 231,000 has now grown or increased the budget as a result of the town meeting action. So I wanted to make sure that you saw that has been brought into the budget officially. So the first column under original appropriation will always be as town meeting voted in the spring, in the May town meeting. And the second column will be any adjustments that are made either by the town or frankly, or by us from line to line. The next thing on page 23, just to call to your attention, also a line that is appearing as a negative. That is under special education, out-of-district tuitions. So similar to the offsets that we brought into the budget for utilities, we are also now planning to charge throughout fiscal '25 both the circuit breaker account and the special education reserve account. We've not yet needed to do those things, but we needed to encumber the money in order to engage the contractual relationship with the out-of-district schools. So that is going to appear as a negative number for the foreseeable future until we actually make those transfers, which we could do really any time. But I would typically not do them until the fourth quarter of the year to see as the budget, as things, sort of progress. But I wanted to call out to you specifically some of those negative numbers so you're not seeing them and wondering. Certainly, if there are any questions, don't hesitate to obviously ask now or ask, at any time.
If I can just interrupt, part of the reason for not moving that money until the fourth quarter is as the budget sort of shakes out and we see if there are savings in other areas, we may end up in a position potentially where we don't need to bring in the full amount from, say, the special education stabilization account, right? So we want to wait as long as we can before we move that money so that we're not bringing in more than we need.
Right. And the last thing, on page 25, just really the bottom line. Now, over the third column under revised budget, you see, column 1, the original appropriation, the original budget number as approved or voted by town meeting back in the spring, $39,616,403, adding the $231,000 to it. So now the official budget for fiscal '25 is $39,848,212. So that's the year-to-date report. Yeah, of course.
One more before you leave that, can you comment on page 1, the choice, the negative 20,000 there?
Yeah, so those would be, I don't specifically know what we spent it on, but throughout the course of the year, there are expenditures that each school is allowed to spend against their choice allocation. So we would have spent a year-to-date 20,000 of the district-wide allocation.
And that's across the district?
Across the district,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I could certainly provide what we specifically bought for those sums, but each principal is given an allocation that's pretty much at their discretion.
I'm good, I don't need to follow up, but
Fair
it
enough.
wasn't clear from the account exactly what that was.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Next, if you go to the revolving fund and a stabilization account, it's a legal size sheet. We are in obviously the month 3 of the school year. These are the funds, running down the left-hand column. What I thought might be helpful was to show the first column being the prior year, ending balance. So when we look at the first column there, or the balance as of 8/31/2023, that's effectively how we opened fiscal year '24. I don't know if that's an interesting, point of reference, but I thought that it might be. And then the next column is how we opened at fiscal '25 on 8/30/24. Sort of a year-to-date, if you wanted to see what was the fund balance a year ago and what was the fund balance a couple months ago at the conclusion of each of the fiscal years. So that's perhaps something that the full committee can discuss, or maybe the budget subcommittee if we want. I want, as we've talked about before, I want these reports to be, useful to you and informative. And I thought that might be, what did closing fiscal '23 look like? What did closing fiscal '24 look like? And obviously then opening fiscal '25. So the balances as of the end of October are in the fourth column over, which is the last of the populated columns for obvious reasons. There'd probably be 3 things to call to your attention under school choice, which is in the second grouping, second line down, and then about halfway down under R11, the circuit breaker. We have received our quarterly payments from the state. So you see between the end of September and the end of October, there have been some increases in those funds, and those entirely represent our quarterly payments from the state. I suppose the next thing to call to your attention might be at the bottom, T29, the School Stabilization Fund. And just to look at the 3 columns that are in reference, under the column that's for August 30 of '24, you see a balance of $5,109,429. That represents the balance as we closed fiscal year '24 before the allocation was brought over, meaning withdrawn from the stabilization fund to fund the school budget. So that's why, and we took approximately 1.4 million from school stabilization to fund fiscal '25. So that's the difference between ending fiscal '24 at the 5.1 million and opening fiscal '25 at the 3.6 million. 3.6 million will remain the balance for the next 12 months, but occasionally the town treasurer will apply interest payments as we've seen in the past, so it will tick up a bit based on interest that the town applies to the fund. But other than that, we certainly won't see a decrease unless something, dramatic happens in the market or that. But, so, those are the three things that are of note here at the end of October. Okay, and the other thing, and Sasha made reference to it in the budget subcommittee report. As we were closing the fiscal year, as we do every year, we took a particularly tight comb in closing fiscal '24. We were working very much in hand with the town's new director of finance. She had some new processes and procedures that she wanted to roll forward, which I welcome. And one of the things that we were able to do is to comb and discover some unpaid bills from past years. We cannot use, it is unlawful to use the current year's budget funds to pay prior year's bills without the school committee's express permission to do so. So through this, there were 18 bills that we discovered, a couple of them going back to fiscal '21, '22, '23, but the vast majority of them were from fiscal '24. So the grand total it's $9,711.67. I've presented on a memo that is also in your folder, which was presented to and discussed at the budget subcommittee meeting last week. What the vendors were, what the purposes were, what the dollar amounts were. And I think, the good news is these are things that we should be finding. We want very much to make sure that we close the year as tight as possible. And we do remind all budget managers and school leaders to get their purchase orders closed, get their invoices in, but it's the last quarter of the school year can be a little busy. So there are going to be things that aren't caught specifically before June 30th, and then the business office, we do our thing and make sure that we capture everything that we can. So it's not necessarily, unusual to have some bills. They're relatively small in by and large. I also think that if you're looking at the bills themselves from fiscal year '24, you see some of the dates ranging between March and June, especially May and June, and I think in all confidence that this has as much to do with the transition in the school facilities department. We had a department head leave. We had some reorganization that was occurring there, so it's not unusual, I guess, in a sort of transition there to have some things that did, fall through the cracks. So I want to make sure that we present this in an open and transparent way and ask the school committee's permission to use fiscal '25 funds to pay prior year's bills.
No questions. We did discuss this in budget subcommittee. In general, we felt that we should move forward, make the payment. I just appreciate you and the team bringing them forward right away, and the due diligence around what potentially happened to make sure we're good now and that you're thinking about it going forward. So thank you for that too. Yeah. Just as a note, the motion is included in the consent agenda when we do get there.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We are moving on to our town meeting recap, and we welcome town moderator Jim Engel. If you would like to join the conversation, you're welcome to come up to the microphone. Do you have anything to start with? Okay.
Jim Engel, town moderator, 362 Longwood Road. I'm really here to get, for the most part, your feedback. What you think went well, what you think didn't go well at town meeting. But before I take your feedback, let me respond to some feedback I've already gotten, which has to do with the seating arrangement. We need to do a better job in terms of making sure that there are seats that are reserved for the school committee. I understand that folks are looking for seats, there were others there already, so we'll do a better job the next time. Beyond that, I'll look for any feedback you might have.
Awesome. Thank you. Go around. You wanna
Oh,
start?
okay, sure. You have a very, very tough job, so I give you so much credit for that. That's a rowdy bunch. It can be a rowdy bunch. So thank you for doing that. And so I think some of the things that I noticed were the timing, like timers. They weren't necessarily going, maybe it's a small thing, but I think it adds up over time. The 3-minute timers, I think, I don't know how that was working, but a lot of times people had to shout, you know, to start the timer or to end at 3 minutes. So I think that is something that would be, do you want to address that? Did you want to?
Well, the timing of speakers is one of the most difficult.
Absolutely.
parts of the job. You do get a lot of help from the audience, from those who
Help.
would like the person to speak longer. You also get a lot of help from the audience who think that they've spoken too long.
Right.
I try to be reasonable,
Mhm.
but I have a timer that I'm watching, and try to caution people that they've reached their 3 minutes or their 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever. But at the same time, kind of be courteous. I don't want to
I know.
throw people with mid-sentence or mid-thought,
Right,
but then at some point you do have to cut it off.
right.
But it is something that I pay a lot of attention to, and as I said, I get a lot of help too.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe and this might be too harsh, but to give people some sort of noise, you know, beep or something when there's 10 seconds left or something, and then, dare I say, the mics should be shut off. No. But sometimes when I'm there, I'm like, the mic should be shut off. But I thought maybe like a beep, because if people are talking, they may not necessarily be looking at the time.
And I think that was something that your chair does, which is to set a timer. And the timer
Yes.
goes off, and if it's loud enough, people hear it,
Mhm.
and people may do something like that to help us out, so that I don't come across as harsh. But,
Yeah.
people are, they're not watching the clock.
Right, no, they're not, yeah,
Watching the audience.
yeah.
I wonder too if, like I realized that, as you just said, there are different times for different mics or different people, depending on who's presenting and who's speaking when. And you may do this at the beginning of the meetings, but to reiterate, you know, this is the time, the allotted time for different people, so that it might minimize the help from the audience in terms of, you know, if they're saying that person should stop, but really they don't need to stop because they have 5 or 7 minutes. I don't know if
True.
that would help
Yeah.
minimize the.
Right, that is true.
I think that's always worth repeating at the beginning and perhaps even during the meeting.
Mhm.
Reminding people that we give the presenter of the
Right.
motion
Mhm.
a bit more time than anyone who wants to provide support.
One of the things that I think about all the time in different meetings that we have in there, folks have to understand that the technology, not every mic on stage or out in the audience is live all the time. And so it takes a minute for literally the levers to be moved up. And then there's a second or two delay before that mic becomes live. And so when people are banging on microphones and things like that, it's not doing anything. It just takes the observer who's running the booth a couple couple of seconds to move the mics up and down to avoid the feedback. So that might be something to announce.
I thought we had more trouble at the beginning of the meeting with that than we did at the end. I think that everybody kind of got into the rhythm. And I think it's a lot to ask of the school people who are running the meeting.
Right.
It's a lot to ask of them to sort of keep the dead mics dead and to live on the mic when the speaker comes up. So they do an admirable job.
One thing that was different that I believe was your idea was to have each board meet individually on the premises prior to the meeting. And I felt like maybe I'm wrong about this, but I felt as a school committee, we were surprised about the FinCom's decision to reduce the Essex Tech budget, put money back into free cash. And it felt like maybe that decision was made just prior to the meeting before town meeting. And I just felt like that didn't add to the flow because we were surprised. And maybe that meeting beforehand did less, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cause more issues?
Yeah, caused more issues than it helped.
Well, the whole issue of asking committees to meet before the meeting came very late in the game, and it's actually a return to an old process, which I've been advocating for the last few years. Years ago, and for me it's getting to be too many years ago, the committees would all meet a half hour before the meeting, all together in one place. It used to be the cafeteria. I think we actually met, when this building was brand new, but for that purpose, which is for people to sort of, okay, we're about to go live on this thing, what are the surprises, what do we anticipate, etc. And I'm going to sort of encourage that in the future. What we didn't do is there was a great deal of confusion about where people were meeting. And I think that the select board met on the stage, the finance committee, I think, met in the media center, and I'm not sure where the school committee met.
Guidance.
Huh?
Guidance room.
Okay, and I think that, we all need to be at the same place at the same time, and we'll organize that a little bit better for next time. I get a lot of pushback from some members of some committees that they don't like the idea of getting there a half hour ahead of time, but I'll push that a lot. With respect to surprises, I will say that there was nothing that happened at the meeting that didn't surprise me, including the finance committee reducing the Essex Tech motion. They had been talking, and leading up to town meeting, I tried to sit in on income hearings, on their hearings, on select board hearings, just to get a sense of where people are on various things. And that reduction in the Essex Tech was talked about at the FinCom meeting on a number of occasions. So when they finally came forward with that at town meeting, I wasn't surprised, because it had never really been a settled issue with them. The other were the indefinite postponement on the last article. Not a surprise to me, because I've got ears too, and I hear what's going on in the community, and I had anticipated that. And I was contacted by people before the meeting saying, we want to indefinitely postpone. How do we do that? And I think that my job as moderator is to, one, not take sides, but two, to make the evening productive, and to have people, as happened on Article 7, where there was an amendment from the floor, which I had to rule out of order. It took up time at the meeting, it embarrassed the person who wanted to do it, and had that person come to me before the meeting, I could have worked with him to explain that what he wanted to do couldn't be done, and saved a lot of time. So I encourage that. So again, nothing that happened at the meeting was what surprised me today. And there were things that I might have expected that didn't happen, and maybe that's what my surprise.
I think the challenge with the FinCom decision specifically around Essex Tech, for us as a committee to be able to take a position on numbers that seemed inaccurate, and so we were all trying to have sort of a sidebar to figure out where those calculations came from, and because there was no information presented, or there was some misinformation around it, it was hard for us to collect ourselves and be able to respond.
The difficulty with the Essex article was we didn't have numbers. We did not have firm numbers from Essex Tech. The only numbers that came in were the day of the meeting. And there were some numbers which you could interpret one way or another. Again, our bylaws say that motions have to be written out 3 days ahead of the meeting.
Oh.
And, we pushed the town manager to get numbers, pushed him really hard to get numbers, and the only numbers that came in were the numbers that the FinCom didn't want. That issue shouldn't have, we shouldn't have to wait for Essex Tech, but I don't think we still have firm numbers from Essex Tech. And those numbers are supposed to be available the 1st of October. So there's a failure on their part to get good numbers to us. Not in defense of the FinCom, they do what they want to do, as you know.
I know this has been talked about or suggested a lot, is moving it to a Saturday morning, because, obviously, you want you and your spouse, you and your partner, as many people as you can to come, and it's hard with childcare going so late at night, and so has there been any serious discussion about having it on a Saturday morning?
There's been discussion. I think that it's as divisive as any other topic in town. The folks who want to have their kids play sports on a Saturday morning.
True.
They don't want it on Saturday.
That's true.
They want to have it. So I don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Yeah, I get that.
I'd be available for either,
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Anybody? Charlie, any thoughts on your debut to town meeting? I don't know if you've been before.
Oh, my debut town meeting. It's my second time meeting.
Okay.
We went last year as a requirement for our history class because our history teacher, Mr. Ames, wanted us to see the democratic process in real life. So we saw that. It was interesting, for sure. I was just really confused. I'm so used to Robert's rules. I had never heard of the other rules, the town meeting rules. I didn't know that's... Yeah, I didn't know that's what we... I mean, everywhere else seems to use... I'm just more familiar with Robert's rules. Just
As am I.
yeah, as we use at Model UN, and when we learn about things in school, it's kind of what we use. Debate team uses Robert's rules. But yeah, is there a way we could? I feel like Robert's rules is more familiar to people. Is there a movement to change to Robert's rules? Is there a reason we use minute time? Yeah, as somebody who would feel like
Where
the
to
process
begin?
would be better understood and more accessible.
I don't know that, it's in our bylaws,
Mm-hmm.
the town bylaws, so it would require a bylaw change to run our meeting by something other than town meeting time. Again, I'm a lifelong learner, and town meeting time is, it's an interesting twist on Robert's rules, which I come to respect. And it has deep roots in colonial legislation. And they talk about non-voters as strangers. That's the word that you see in town meeting time, which is odd. It goes back to,
I've been called worse. I've been called worse.
Yeah, it was nice to see the process for sure. It's interesting.
Thank you. Matt, Sasha, anything to add?
First, appreciate you asking for feedback, a couple observations, and then a question for you. The first, kind of at the board's meeting ahead of time. I like the spirit of it. I might suggest the day before instead of the 30 minutes, considering how hectic in the prep, and I think some people like to be able to be there just to settle in, so rather than 30 minutes ahead of time, not much is going to change in that 24 hours. That would be my suggestion. The other is similar, how you keep a timer for any public comment. Did you do something similar for how long you keep the voting open for? So that that is consistent for each question. I would suggest that as well. And then my question is, I heard that there may be a working group discussing or continuing to advance how do we improve town meeting going forward? Is that something that's happening?
Let me make a comment on your second comment. With the advent of the electronic voting, haven't quite perfected how that works. And I think we're going to have to do some sort of a timing out on that. I did get a criticism on the last, let me call it an observation. On the last two motions of town meeting, there was, this is on Article 8, there was a motion, the main motion was made, then there was a motion to indefinitely postpone, and then there was a motion to call the question. Calling the question means that you stop debate, you go immediately to the motion that's on the floor. On the motion to call the question, there were 601 votes cast. On the motion to indefinitely postpone, which happened just moments later, there were 591 votes cast. Somebody said, what happened to those 10 votes? Well, I don't know. Then they said, how long did you leave the voting open? On the motion to call the question, the voting was open for 39 seconds, and the motion to indefinitely postpone was 29 seconds. What I was doing, and it's got to be improved, is I kept a look at the tally. When I saw the tally slow down or stop, I said, close the voting.
Yeah.
I think that's too imprecise. I think that, but on the other hand, I don't know why 39 seconds or 29 seconds is such a long period of time to have to leave the voting open. And you know, when you go to maybe a town meeting with 30 or 40 articles, if you leave the voting open for a minute,
No, too much.
all of a sudden, the meeting's an hour longer. Just, so we have to do something.
Yeah.
Having the group that the day ahead, I point out that on Article 8, the final motion for Article 8 came in at 25 minutes past 5 on the night of the meeting. It was changing and changing and changing and changing until 25 minutes past 5. So
That's helpful to understand. We still didn't see it until town meeting, so even in our earlier meeting, we didn't see it.
I think that if we had met at 6:30, you would have seen it.
Oh, you're saying if we met collectively, we would have.
Yeah,
It's-
collectively.
If you met on Monday.
No, understood, that's fair, okay, so you know that, yep.
Oh, I was just going to say, sorry, that I appreciate the transparency around the timing, because I understand that it's interesting to have that perspective, so thank you for sharing that openly. That was it, just appreciate
So I did get, a bit of a glut of punishment. The next night I watched the tape. So,
Well, I was going to say one other thing about meeting ahead. Andrea did mention to us if that was something in the future that we were going to be doing, we may want a message to all of the boards to check in to get our electronic tools before, because we ended up having to cut in front of people. They were trying to expedite us getting to our seats.
yeah.
That may have also caused an issue with why we didn't have a section of seating, and so moving forward, maybe we would not plan accordingly for that.
The only other issue is the overflow room. It's got to be a little problem. Even though we try to not have it, to keep people out of the overflow room, we still wound up with people in the overflow room. And that causes a problem with the voting too, because there's a 10-second delay between what happens in the auditorium and what happens in the overflow room because of the ICANN delay. And that just adds to the
Right.
whole issue of when you cut off the vote.
Can the visitors, do the visitors in the overflow room and the residents in the main room, is that done, or can that be done? So all the voters can be, as many as possible in the main room?
I think the practice in the past has been to let the non-voters, the so-called strangers into the room by vote of town meeting.
Right. But for them to not be in the room, I mean, I guess that's, since some of our residents aren't, like, they are in the overflow room and their vote isn't necessarily counted on time. That's something to think about.
We had, when we set things up, the issue was that if there weren't enough seats available for voters, we would ask the non-voters to leave.
Gotcha.
But just as a courtesy, I mean, sometimes there's plenty of room. The last two meetings where we've had 600 folks at the
Yeah,
meeting.
that's good.
But as I looked out, even, there were plenty of seats, there were lots of seats. Just that, everybody wants the house.
Yeah.
But one perhaps final thought, that once upon a time, the school committee and school administrators, Tom and I, would sit on the stage
Yes.
as an elected body.
Mm-hmm.
As did the planning board. And,
I'm not sure how we got relegated to the audience and have to go up to the stage or make motions on school-related issues from work. I don't know, I don't understand how or why that happened. There's certainly room up there.
that was certainly, that was, the organization of the stage is, people look to the moderator to say, who do you want on the stage? In the past, moderator said, select board, finance committee, planning board, and school committee, you said that. But if there's a motion that, and to some extent, I agree with you. I think that, particularly, when in the spring, when 60% of the
Right.
budget comes from this room,
Mm-hmm.
to do that from seats on the floor is perhaps not disrespectful, but not recognizing the relevance. So we'll work on that. Hopefully, one of the things that people may not realize is the orchestra pit is, when you're moderating the meeting, is a real problem. Because they're so separated from the group. There's a way we could, and else.
I have two.
Can I just go back to my question about the working group? I heard that in select board.
I'm sorry,
There's a comment about a working group about continuing this discussion for the working group across the boards.
the only thing I've heard, when I've been promoting this, is I have not been happy with the schedule leading up to town meeting. Too many things are being left too late, and we're not getting motions, we're not getting accurate articles. We've had warrants signed before they were ready to be signed. There's a pretty big push by myself and a couple of others, and the finance committee especially, to tighten up that whole process. And I appreciated your earlier comments on your own budget process, to get it started, to get it sort of rolling early enough so that there's enough time for everybody to understand what these articles are.
That's likely what it was. Thank you.
I think that what you're asking about will probably be discussing the tri-board. We haven't finalized that agenda yet, but I believe that talking about town meeting and, what we can do as boards. Clarification for you, Jim, with the pre-meeting that you are in favor of, was your intention for us to meet together as a tri-board?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
Because I
that was
think
my
that's-
initial
That's the only way
interpretation.
that you get
Yeah.
Right.
this interplay with any last minute change of heart on the part of the finance committee, select board on articles of interest to you. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Okay, that makes sense, and I think that seems to be something we could easily incorporate moving forward. Yeah, and I think in terms of it would help with the no surprises piece, like you're saying, and even if, I think at the chair level, we could try to build in like a chair's call, catch everybody up like the day before such or something, so it's all are on the same page going into things. It'll help make everything more efficient.
But thank you for your time. Before I leave, I want to make one comment about one of your appointments. The Whittier appointment, Carol Sullivan. I've been working with her as part of my participation in strategic planning. Real breath of fresh air. She's
Oh,
really
love that.
engaged. She's really very responsive to the customer information. So congratulations on a nice pick.
Thank you.
She was wonderful Monday's select board meeting, if anybody saw. She was really
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just
Tough
to add
job.
on one more thing, would it make sense for like the Whittier rep or the Essex Tech rep to meetings when we're voting on Essex Tech or Whittier? Because I don't think the rep was at the last meeting for that, were they? When we voted on, when the finance committee changed the amount?
We don't have a rep.
Oh.
Well,
Not for Essex Tech.
it's a different.
Oh.
Essex Tech is
with Essex
different.
Tech.
We're,
How do you describe it?
So
sorry.
Essex, we're not members of the Essex Tech group. We belong, we're partners and members of Whittier. So we only have a Whittier rep that we're required to have. And it's actually by the town. There's, in years past, there's been, a close relationship between Whittier, or a closer relationship between Whittier and the Ipswich School Committee by virtue of it's our high school, our kids end up going there, right? But we don't have the same relationship with Essex Tech. The only way that students can go to Essex Tech is if Whittier doesn't offer the program there.
I see, okay. So would it make sense to have our Whittier rep at the next meeting when we have, were they at the meeting?
I don't know if she was,
When we're voting on passing money,
yes.
just for
She
clarification.
came to the annual town meeting. There wasn't anything on the warrant for Whittier. It was just Essex Tech.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Jim.
All right, next, we are going to review our school committee norms. So we did take the time to review these last year. We'll review them again this year as we're in full swing. I'm just gonna, they're on the district website, they're in our folder. I'm gonna just go through, summarize, and then anybody can add in questions or anything as we go. All right, so first, we want our meetings to be effective and efficient. We're ever questing for that. All right, we will strive to reach decisions by consensus and recognize that a member's authority is derived only through a majority decision of the committee acting as a whole during an open public meeting. Once the school committee has taken action, members will support the official position of the school committee. And I just want to point out that wording is not only in our norms, it's also in policy BBAA. And then I also wanted to add that that applies to the chair as well. I have no more authority to make decisions on my own as above anybody else, or anybody who's chair of anything. All right, next, we agree to debate issues, not each other, and we support each other's freedom of expression. We strive for no surprises, and we set this tone for the entire school system. And we recognize the importance of professional growth and development, and we'll seek training. And think we talked about that maybe at our summer workshop, but we can revisit that. Does anybody have anything to add? Any questions?
I have a question. So approved in 2020, so obviously this was something that a previous committee put together, and then we just sort of agree. I mean, it's not something that we update or change, or it just gets inherited or adopted as we go along. And it's also reflected in, is this a comment, like where did this sort of come from?
This, I believe, came, like MASC has a version of it. So in my time on school committee, we have not, I hear what you're saying, and I've thought that too. Like, do we need to revote it? Do we need to update it? I don't know if anybody has.
We've reaffirmed them
Yeah.
in the past, but we haven't, I mean, that was just the date of approval, but I think historically, if we look back, I believe we've reaffirmed them over the years since then. Is that an accurate statement? Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, we haven't. I thought we have.
So,
Do not, if I repeat for people at home, you don't have a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
What Laura was saying is they're reviewed every year, but not formally approved.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. I mean, we could take an action to, or we could just add a notation that they've been reviewed, open to suggestions, or we can leave it as just
Well,
something.
are they reviewed at the beginning? Like, I feel like just operationally, it would be good to have some process around, like, this happens at
I agree.
summer retreat or in September ahead of,
Yeah,
because
I agree. Yeah.
I thought we reviewed these at our retreat. I might be thinking a retreat ago, but I do think that would be a nice time. And in my history of paying attention to school committee prior to being on school committee, former school committee member Nicole Zito, I think, brought these to light. I don't think there were norms that we followed as a school committee in Ipswich, and she felt very strongly that there should be norms. So I believe these were put into place after she moved out of the district, but, and maybe they were derived from the MASC.
Thought they were, but now I can't
They
find
are.
it. Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
I have
Okay.
Yeah. And put onto our website. But I don't know how you all feel, but I think reviewing these at a retreat seems like a nice time to have a discussion about them.
Yeah. I like that idea. And it kind of informs the planning of the next year in some ways, especially that last one. All right. Everybody feeling good about that plan? Okay. Let's all remember when it's retreat time. All right.
write your agenda now.
I know. All right, next. School committee goals review and potential vote to approve. Haley.
I was just going to say, in the interest of time, I don't know if we would need to, if it makes sense, perhaps to move forward to the conversation for prepping for tri-board, and then we can see how time is to circle back to this, and if there's time, we can get to it, and if there isn't, we could push it to another meeting.
Yeah, I haven't thought about what our next agenda looks like.
I can pull that up.
Okay. I'm fine with going out of order. Anybody else ready to roll?
I mean, I'm happy to
Yeah.
jump into it if we want to, but I just,
Yeah.
looking at the clock.
You want to stay till 10 or 11?
I don't know. This week, I feel like everyone's probably,
Yeah.
I would like to be sharp and clear when we talk about our goals.
What's next? We're just looking at the agenda planning potential for our next meeting.
Wasn't a ton.
No.
School we have the school improvement plans at the next meeting. That's the big presentation.
Big one, okay. What if we,
I mean, it's not going to take all night, obviously. I
Yeah.
mean, it'll be similar to the presentation this evening, a little bit longer.
I have an idea, if we just have a quick review, and then if we have any, like, we won't vote, but then if we have any comments, we could send it to you, and then then you could,
Just vote them at the next meeting.
yeah, you could compile them and vote them, and then if you feel like there's anything big, you could call another operations subcommittee, but we'll see. I don't know that you'll get anything big, you know?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Just a
so
reminder to send them individually, not
individually,
as a
yes.
group.
Thank you, yes.
Okay. So, I think what I'll do is just sort of, I'll probably read like A and B of each one. I won't get into each of the bullets, so we can kind of cruise through. So this, and just to give a little context, this was a combination of looking back at the goals from last year, and then Sasha and Jenny both had suggestions coming into our first meeting around this. So it was sort of a combination of those three documents. In addressing facilities, we sort of broke that up into two sections in terms of developing a plan and building consensus for the new elementary school building. And then separate from that, how we ensure that the current buildings are maintained and updated and addressed. So the bullets within each of these sort of drive at the action items, if you will, for how we would do that. Budget. Also, I probably should say, we talked about these as, we did spend time in terms of trying to really articulate what is our responsibility related to these things versus Dr. Blake's and Tom. So as that pertains to budget, you'll see, that we chose words in terms of collaboration with administration, who's responsible for managing the budget. So it's our job to sort of be accountable and work with them to understand how that's happening and execute on it. So for budget, again, I just outlined accountability and collaboration with administration to responsibly manage the fiscal year 25 budget. And then secondary to that, accountability for responsible financial management of educational stabilization funds and override funds. Moving on to FEFI policy review. This was something that was in last year's goals, and given that that's an ongoing project, we wanted to maintain that in there. Moving on to number 4, student achievement and social well-being. Providing support, strategic guidance to the initiatives to improve academic performance, including the following considerations. I'm not going to read them all out. Student safety awareness. Talked a lot about this in terms of how we're fostering a safe environment, collaborating and communicating with partners in the community to build awareness and engagement around bullying and general student safety and environmental safety of our students. Community engagement, this was one that we hadn't completely fleshed out at the end of our last meeting, so I tweaked a little bit, but we felt strongly that we wanted to, this folds into a lot of the initiatives, so some of it's a little bit repetitive because you see it already reflected throughout the other goals. But that in terms of how we can communicate and be transparent as much as possible with the community around any types of recommendations, goals, outcomes, activities, and just a general sense of how we foster positive relationships between students, families, communities, community partners, and staff and administration. So that was a real quick hustle through. But I think if we want to leave it there, and as Diana suggested, if people have questions or suggestions.
Let's say,
send them
like,
over.
I have, like, capitalized this word, do you know what I mean? Like, I have some, like, pretty minor things. I think if it's at that level, send it individually to Haley. If it's going to require more of a discussion, then you can either, I would say, let's bring it to the next meeting, and then, so we're having a discussion in public, but if it's just nitpicky wording stuff.
Yeah,
send
feel
it
free to
that
just
way.
mark it up and send me a marked up draft for those
Okay.
kinds of
Separately?
things. Yeah.
From, okay.
One, if it warrants discussion, I might suggest, Tilly, if you don't mind, share that with Haley as well. Haley's done a really nice job of taking it and responding to, perhaps we could address it this way, so if you have those thoughts, Haley can get a head start on it, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Share those ahead of time as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you
These are
for
great,
that
thank you.
subcommittee
Yeah,
and Haley
good job.
for getting those going, gonna get done. Dr. Blake, you want to proceed similarly? Just a quick overview?
So my goals are all based on the school committee goals, since a lot of it has to do with, operational pieces. As you know, we have to fill out the mass rubric, so each of the goals is tied to a different standard and the different objectives. So, out of the gate, the facilities one, I'm looking to ensure that all the identified safety upgrades and repairs are completed on time and within budget for the district's schools and athletic fields. And then the second one is, ensuring the completion of all the ongoing maintenance projects and enhancements funded through paying grants with a focus on improving indoor and outdoor learning environments. And that's, I suppose I could tweak that because it's also budgetary things that are, projects that we have ongoing. With Chris Race leaving and the new facilities director, I'm spending a lot of time on that, and I want to make sure that a lot of these projects keep moving along. I think we got out of the gate a little bit late with the flooring project here at the high school, for example, and so when they were able to start, they started late, and we had to end it early because we knew that they weren't going to be able to finish it completely on time. So I've been much more involved with a lot of that stuff moving forward. Well, this year and will be moving forward, so I wanted to capture that. The fiscal management, again, similar to last year, being able to develop and present a balanced budget in collaboration with my leadership team that's going to meet our needs. And then I've already started this process, whether or not it continues to be a goal, I have to do it. Revising the capital plan moving forward. There's been, it's been put together by Chris Race in the past, based largely on the School Dude Solutions report from 2018, I think. So there's a lot of things that are in there that maybe we don't need to do, and we can swap things out. So we review this every year, but what I've done this year is I've basically started literally taking it apart and looking at each project, seeing what's there, why it needs to be done, and then asking the question, does it actually need to be done? And we're finding that there's a number of projects on there that we don't necessarily need to do, or in some cases, we had slated for future years, and we've had to do them already, so they can come off the project, i.e. a boiler at the Winthrop School.
Right.
We had no choice but to do it last year. So essentially rebuilding the capital plan moving forward and getting us on a better, more stable trajectory. Also not included in the past have been any of the athletic items. So, we know, and we've known for years, but it's not been in a capital plan, that we have to replace the carpet on the turf field in the next 3 or 4 years. That's an $800,000 price tag. So we're going to need to look at that. The other thing, is much smaller money, considering, compared to $800,000, is the Roundy gym floor, the upper gym, it's at the point where it really needs to be taken down to the bare floor and repainted. And in the process, we also need to replace the bleachers. Well, that's about $140,000 to do the bleachers and another 25 or 30 perhaps to do the gym floor. We've got to account for that in the plan. So those are just two examples of things that we haven't been in the plan historically that we've got to now work in. It's also hard to gauge because how much money do we want to continue to sink into and even plan to sink into the elementary schools at this point? So, sort of went off the rails there for a minute, sorry. Going back to the policy. No, we don't.
I'm just kidding.
The FEFE policy review, again, we've got to get that done, so I need to take an active role in seeing that through and making sure that it's going to meet the needs of not only the school committee, but more so the recipients and the people that are reviewing the grants and such, so. And then the student achievement and well-being, the discussion is around ensuring equitable access to our academic resources and including extracurricular opportunities, and focusing on, eliminating achievement gaps. And it's not just coursework, it's field trips, and it's, access to sports and things like that. And just making sure, because there's been a lot of discussion around, okay, we throw around the word equity, but, do we have kids, and to what degree do we have students that aren't participating in sports because of fees?
Right.
To what degree do we have kids not going on field trips? We've had those discussions. So it's more so, more those types of things than just what kids have access to coursework. And in the student safety awareness, collaborating with the local agencies, similar to what the school committee goal is, communicating to parents around school and community safety issues. I've been doing the weekly piece with Ipswich Aware and those connections and those types of communications, and just expanding on that some. Tied directly to the school committee goals, measurable. So,
We just need to add a number 6, because we added that one. For
Community engagement.
community engagement.
so I tied that with family engagement. I could do a community engagement piece too. Could add that in.
Awesome.
They don't have to be one-to-one correlation,
yeah.
but they can.
Family engagement.
Well done, I think, to everybody getting this draft up for us. I'm impressed, and I think they're inspiring, so.
Oh,
What?
wow.
It's getting harder to hear that side of the room as it gets later in the evening.
Wondering if
That
my
gets
ears are
louder.
plugging up or if everyone's starting to get lower and lower.
I'll speak louder. Not me.
I think as everyone's getting more tired, they're getting quieter, and so
Okay,
it's
all right.
harder to hear over here. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and in your defense, or my defense, our defense, that's loud.
Yeah,
It's
I
loud,
was also
yeah.
asking if that's the new
Yeah.
seat, if this
Yeah.
is the new norm,
Yeah.
let's speak.
No,
Trying to
it
get
shouldn't
in
be.
here.
Yeah. All right. We wrapped up that? Okay.
And again, I'm sorry, if there's any feedback on these
Yes,
before we
yes.
finalize them, please send it to me.
Really
Awesome.
very good, Brian. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing these early as well.
thank you. Is anyone interested in taking like a 5-minute break?
Sure. I could use a stretch.
Okay. We'll plan for 5-ish minutes and then resume.
So we'll be back at 9, 10, or 11.
Sounds good.
What am I going to do with that? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do?
Mics remain hot.
happening here. Yeah.
5:20.
Oh, yeah. I bring a jacket down my class, like a down jacket. I'm like,
happening. Okay.
do I need one? Pack is the same thing. I'm like,
All right, we're
You lost your chance.
back at
I don't know if this will take
9:11, as Dr. Blake predicted. Ready? Okay, next up. Elementary school building project, next steps, and tri-board prep.
Yeah, let me clear a couple smaller ones first that we discussed as a subcommittee. First was, we brought up visiting an additional school. The subcommittee recommends visiting Swampscott. We could likely get that done in early December. The thoughts, sorry, I should add, and we discussed potential ones in the future as well, but we at least wanted to suggest Swampscott. Thoughts there? Seeing lots of nods,
Love
excellent.
field trips, yay.
The other thing
driving?
that we discussed, and I guess the ask would be for you to bring up at a chair's call, would be to include one member from the select board and from the FinCom. It would be lovely if everybody came. Logistically, it's not realistic, and so if you might suggest that, we'd love to have them. I think the general engagement that we've heard from them so far, particularly this year, has been wonderful. Takes me to my next one, which was at the select board meeting on Monday. They voted to draft a letter of support, echoing our vote from last month, and sending that to the MSBA. They have draft language, they're going to finalize it and vote on it in their next meeting, but they did vote to send the letter, not on the specific language. A reminder, I feel like we should start every meeting with this, is we'll hear back from the MSBA in December. That's sort of the next major milestone. Should we be accepted, we start thinking about feasibility next year. We talked about ongoing town engagement. That's been a focus for us really for almost the last couple of years, but so it's a regular topic. In particular, we've been producing more content, and so sharing that material to the district site, similar that was done in 2018. Follow-ups there, but in general, something we're gonna do. And then also starting to talk about more broadly, what information should we be sharing just in general, not what we're just, in addition to what we might be preparing for ourselves. As well as FAQs, and so we're going to continue and begin some of those things.
Excellent, yeah.
Those are the quick ones. We have a tri-board meeting coming up. One of the asks from the tri-board was to hear about the elementary building project. You have in your folder a draft presentation. I'll run through that. In general, my recommendation for that is that we hit on 3 topics, and we discussed this last night, so I should say the subcommittee's recommendation, 3 topics. One is a recap of our discussions over the last several months. The second is sharing some high-level information on model schools. We've had just general questions, it's come up, and so I thought it would be a good time just to share. And then third, sort of what to expect and what's coming next for us. And so let me open that up and I'll go through some of the detail in there. The first slide, the executive summary, is identical to what we have reviewed in every meeting when we've talked about it, with the exception of I took out the middle section that was like goals for our discussion. So the context and then approach is the same. Slide 2 is just the specific agenda topics. Slide 3, the 3 primary factors that we've been discussing consistently over the last several months, primarily educational plan, and that is coming from the superintendent and administrators, is not us informing the educational plan. The project cost and timing, and that is historically what is been done in the state. We went back 16 years looking at data. This was not us projecting going forward. And then town sentiment. Where do we have information from listening sessions or from formal votes? Page 4 is, actually has not been changed in the last couple of meetings, I believe. Maybe, I think actually there was a typo or something. But here were the 3 major things that we heard from Brian and the administrators through Brian about key educational plan considerations. Slide 5 is the school cost, and again, this is the historic building cost from the MSBA. This is not a projection going forward. Because there were a couple questions or comments in prior discussions, I added additional footnotes on here, so some of the bullets got a little bit longer, just to add clarity, particularly for someone who's picking up the material and reading it without listening to the conversation or either didn't see the meeting. So I added that. The town sentiment was the recap of recently what we have, or the last several years, going back to 2018, just a little bit of a recap. Slide 7 begins new information, so let me just take a minute on this. We have not seen this as a body, but everything here is a distillation of the MSBA website. There's no new information that anybody has come up with or that is making recommendations. It's tried to take key points from the MSBA that might be beneficial for the tri-board meeting. And it also helps to just in general guide a conversation around where there might be questions, information, misinformation, how do we move forward, what does this mean? Slide 7 is almost entirely copied and pasted from the site. The first piece is just from the MSBA, what is the model school? What should you know about it? The intention is for adaptation and reuse. I'm going to wear this analogy out, but it is not buying the same set of Legos and then for the exact same price and then continuing to just build it over and over again. It does account for flexibility. There are 26 board-approved model schools. This is where the language is not always super clear. The board-approved schools are the ones you can copy from. So you can look at that school, say we want something that looks like this, and then build that. 17 of those 26 are elementary schools. Also quoting from the MSBA, on average, where they see that model schools speed up the process is in the upfront process prior to construction. It speeds things up by an average of 85 days. There is, for some that are closer to, I think it was a year and a half, some are a little less, but on average, it's 85 days. Which makes sense because where your opportunity to speed things up is in reuse of construction documents, architectural diagrams. The physical build is the physical build. That doesn't get much faster. One thing that they do highlight is that there are fewer change orders because you know what you're dealing with. And so there's both a financial and time benefit there. One important note, why you see more model schools prior to 2016 is in 2016, the MSBA stopped offering incentive points. And so the money or the funding from the MSBA went tick down slightly because of that. Not a major drop off, but you'll see a difference there. Slide 8 shows the proportion of model schools versus all of the elementary schools built through the model school program. So since 2008, there have been 98 elementary schools built total in partnership with the MSBA. 5 of those were model schools. Only one of those is since 2014. So there were several done prior to that, but drop off isn't quite the right word. Very low volume since 2014.
It's probably fair, we think, to say that that correlates with the incentive points, right?
The timing is almost exactly the same. That's right.
How much points? It's 5 points, right? 5 percentage points?
I can try to look it up real quickly. I don't know that off the top of my head. But along those lines, what I did make sure to do to help with some of these follow-up questions, and our intention is to share this, if we're good with it, basically right away, so everyone has plenty of time to read ahead of time, is at the bottom of each page included links directly to where all this information came from, so that if you have that same follow-up question, take a look at ahead of time, and you can go try to, if it's possible, to pull it right away to answer that in the meeting during the tri-board discussion. But I will find out that one so we can make sure to bring it up in the tri-board. That's a good question. On slide 9, wanted to look at those 5 elementary schools that have been built that were based off of a board-approved model school. So of the 5 built since 2008, only one of them The Marlborough School is based off of the New Bedford Lincoln Elementary. That's the only one that's based off of one of the board-approved, like, template schools that you can copy from. The other 4 are based off of model schools, but those model schools, because they're so much older, are no longer listed as board-approved schools to copy from. I believe, I don't know, it's because of the age, right? If you think about if those schools were in place 20-something years ago, some of the design is in a different place than where educational standards and things aren't. So it makes sense that some of those age out.
Yeah.
I don't know that for fact, that is mine.
No,
That is one potential reason.
yeah, no, I would agree. I feel like there's been so many studies on how kids learn better, whether it's a group or interactive, and so, yeah, that would make sense that there's not as many flexible, perhaps.
That's a good point, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Slide 10 has the detailed information in line with what we've been discussing for all of our schools over the last few months, which is year that they were built, square footage, total enrollment, and then several cost numbers. One thing to highlight, because it does get confusing, and it's super small for you to read, the basis for total facilities grant, even the wording, that's the first multi-million-dollar number that you see. That is the amount that is eligible for MSBA funding. The maximum facilities total project, let me make sure I get this right. Total project budget is what the entire project cost. The difference, and I'll just use this Douglas Elementary, so I can use specific numbers. The basis for the grant is the $28 million number. The total project budget is the 32. Not everything can be submitted to the MSBA for reimbursement. This could be, and it is not in this case, but it could be luxuries as you wanted to build a pool. They're not going to reimburse you for that. There are other things that are still required, whether it be by regulation or is needed for the design, but don't fit MSBA criteria. So you may still need to do it for a state or environmental,
Environment.
thank you, it's getting late, but the MSBA wouldn't reimburse it. So there's a host of reasons there, but there's a little bit of a different dollar amount.
Can I ask a question? So about,
One
oh,
last-
so,
sorry, no,
okay,
just
go
one
ahead.
last note. And then the last numbers are, I put it in 2024 costs. Because the schools were built such a long time ago, and to make it consistent, I escalated it all consistently with a 4%. Just want to note that.
I have a
And then-
question after that.
Go ahead, Jen.
I just want to understand. So Fairhaven, total project budget, 24,650, et cetera. And then total grant. Wait, maybe that was a bad example. No, total cost, 39 and change. Total grant. But that doesn't, oh, do those add up?
That's the
I think-
2024 amount. So the 39 million is what the 24,655,000 is in 2024 dollars. So if you advance that 12 years based on inflation, that's what that would have cost us today, or cost them today, just so you can consistently compare.
Okay.
And then the grant is that 24 is, that's what that 14 million would have been in 2024 dollars.
Okay.
And then the total town paid, like, that's what came out, or that is, that 15 million is specifically what was contributed by the town. So it's the
Wow,
39.
15 million?
They had the incentive points.
That's great.
Oh, sorry, Diane, I forgot you.
Oh, no, so I have to say this, I know where this information came from. It's like probably a direct copy paste from from another document that we've been looking at. My understanding, the way that we've looked at numbers, it was all to get relative costs, not to guess what things would cost
That's right.
this year.
We are,
So
yeah, we are not projecting what any building would cost in the
So
future. This is all
that's-
historic data.
So I think if we're saying that, to put on a slide that the 2024 cost would be this, implies that would be the 2024 cost. If we look at the chart that the MSBA has, the average building cost, or even, it goes much ahead of inflation. So you'd have to follow where that school was and then follow that curve,
Yep.
which would probably be a lot higher than 3%. This is not my background, but I feel like it's not accurate to use it as standalones.
Oh, I
To
see
take
what you're
something
getting.
from
Yes,
14 years ago,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
12 years ago, and then,
yes, sorry, it took me a second to get where
Okay.
you're going. We did this to do it consistently, so it is, when we discussed it, it was how much is a 1 versus 2 scenario,
yeah.
just to make it consistent. Using that 4% inflation escalation like I'm doing here, yes, this is not to say they could have built that school today for 15 million. It is just to do the comparison to say that is 15 million in 2024 dollars as compared to the Marlboro School at the bottom, which was built in 2018, that would have been 33 in today's dollars. So it's just to do an even comparison for schools that were built many years apart. That's the value of doing the escalation. Not to say today, it is purely comparative.
So
You could not have built either of those schools for that day. We did it just to be
Yeah.
consistent.
I guess I don't like the optics of it, and I think it's representing that that's what we are saying it
No,
would.
I understand where you're going.
So I think it's something that can be explained, but to assign that number there,
Are you suggesting keep just the original dollar amount and not do
Correct.
because it might be misinterpreted as?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We probably should do that consistently because we have that on the other schools as well. So we're just, that way we're showing consistent numbers
Well,
for everything.
but for the other ones, we were
We do the
comparing
comparison. That's fair.
a
I'm fine with that.
chunk of schools to a chunk of schools
No, I
and
think
treat
it's
them
a
all the
good-
same. This is like a standalone.
You immediately went there, Jen, that's now what I realized I took from your question too.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if people are going to interpret that differently, we can talk about that in a moment, but yes, take it off so it's not
So
misinterpreted.
Take off the.
Take off those last 3 columns.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
I would
suggestion.
argue against that, Diana, because it shows that what it would cost today if for that school, or how much of a hit that school would be. And I think it's important to show that. That's what we looked at in the spreadsheet also when we were, considering it, and this is the information that we had. So I think it's important to keep that, because otherwise there's no way people can compare it. I think it's important to have that.
Is it possible just to add like an asterisk saying these prices do not include the new safety features or standards that are required in it, and so they're not reflective of a modern, present-day inflation-adjusted price?
Yeah.
Or, do I understand correctly that, maximum facilities grant for like Douglas, the 17 million, is the 2012 equivalent of what you're saying the town paid 24 million, all the way to the right? I'm a visual person, and if this is going before the FinCom, these are numbers people, if you just took everything to the right of maximum facilities grant and put it in pink to make a very obvious break in the numbers, I think that might help visually to say the difference. Because then you're seeing it in the 2012, 13, and 18 in one color, and then it's very clear that the 2024 number conversion is exactly that.
I get what you're saying about the color coding system. I'm just, if we took a school, at what point does it not work? If we took a school built in 1990 and applied 3%, I would gather you would not land on what that school would cost if you built it in 2024. So I don't know if you have anything to add, but can you accurately make assumptions based on something built 12 years ago with the one variable that you're applying being inflation?
It's a bit of a leap, for sure.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
Sorry,
So I stand by the suggestion to take off those last ones, and if anybody wants to do that math and try to come up with analysis on their own, I don't stand by those numbers. And that's why I think we're hearing people say, why aren't you looking at it? Like, what, I personally cannot make a conclusion based on this limited and dated information.
Yeah, the value before was we were comparing two things, and so we wanted to have a common denominator. So as to
Yes.
if this would be interpreted as here's how much it would cost you today, that would be wildly off. I'm not considering increasing construction costs. I'm not taking out the incentive points. That would be way beyond the scope of what we've done here. And so if it's interpreted that way, that's not at all how it's intended, and I want to make sure that's not how it's read by anybody. So that's fair.
Just so, like, this has been a continual problem for me. I don't have access to the slideshow that you're all looking at. I have like an older copy. Is there any way I could get shared the current slideshow? I keep on getting all the old materials, like not the updated ones, just so I can better like look at what the stuff is.
See if we can sort it out quickly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm happy to.
Yeah,
Share my
I just
screen.
realized that I'm not looking at the same slideshow that you guys are looking at.
Where's your meeting folder?
So
I mean, folder's right here, but it's all like copies of it, so it's not the
Shared it
actual.
to your email.
Oh, perfect.
Top of your inbox.
thank you, Haley.
Thank you.
So how do we address, I think it's a fair point that we're not, the intention is not to project what it would cost. So how do we, but I think it's still valuable to say, here's the 5 schools, and some,
Here's what they
I'm literally
cost
copying and
in
pasting the data from the
2012.
MSBA site
Exactly.
minus the 2024 part, so.
That's
Yeah,
what I would recommend.
I don't want the cost, I don't want it to be misinterpreted as cost projection. hadn't even occurred to me until it brought
Exactly
up.
what people are going to hang their hat on.
And that's where you just went, and that wasn't what I was thinking at all, so I appreciate that. So,
So I
yeah,
would
I think
recommend,
It's also,
Yeah.
that is new, right? So I think in your thinking around presenting information that we have utilized in the past, those 3 columns have not been there, right?
Yes, they have been there.
we looked at it when we were trying to do the, like,
Yeah.
like just
This is
the
what was there.
same, how would you do just when you would do the comparison, not as a projection of cost, but how do you
Yeah.
really compare a school that was, the point is, how do you compare a school that's built in 2012 versus 2020? And so we were just trying to balance that a little bit.
But I think part of the things that we talked about last night was we were showing people the information that we had when we were making these decisions. So
This stuff isn't.
that's, if we're going to,
Yeah.
that was something that we had talked about. So,
we had that information, but we didn't discuss it as if those were the cost of 2024. It was more in line with the slide 5. I firmly stand by my recommendation that we remove the last 3 columns
I mean, with
from
the other
this
data,
chart.
yeah, they're across 14 years.
This slide.
Yeah, these schools are much closer together, so. they are more
Exactly.
consistent.
Yep.
I also think my label of like cost, the 2024 cost is misleading, so no matter what, we got to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If-
Okay, unanimous approval from down there, got it.
And then,
Because what's going to happen is
I'm with you,
somebody's going
yeah.
to see this slide and say, oh, if we wanted to build the Douglas School this year, we could build it for 52 million, and
Yeah,
the town is only going to have to pay 24.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
going
not
to
at all
be,
what this is. No,
that's
you're
going to
right.
be the talking point that is all over.
We'll take off.
Right.
And it's not even close to being
No, not at all, yeah.
factual.
And that's
So I
not
think
what the,
that's what we
no,
have.
and that's not what's intended there. That's a good point.
and
Okay,
to your point about them being close to, like,
yeah.
close together, they, they're somewhat different, they're different sizes, but you can compare them to each other, or you can go to that chart and look at other schools that were built in 2012 for what it's worth and see
Right.
where they land with
Sure.
those. That's really all we can do with that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
But even just for more transparency, I would add an asterisk or at the bottom saying like these inflation-adjusted numbers do not represent what the school would be today, just because standards have gone up, materials have gone up more than just what inflation shows.
I'd like to, I'm fine with that, fine. Good idea, makes sense. But what I would like to do is what I will suggest, is making that cost information, just to go underneath the custom cost slide. So then we have the costs one slide apart. Then we go down, so once we see the cost for the custom schools, and then the cost for the historic costs for the model schools, then we go down to, based on that decision, the single school was decided by the school committee. So, you know what I mean? So it has like the,
You're talking about slide 17 and 18?
I
what that
don't have a
information
number on it.
And
I
can
don't
I
know,
suggest,
the model school project details to go underneath the, so the two cost things are right in a row.
You're saying with, like, slide 10 that we were just.
Is that slide 10? I don't know.
Where 6 is.
Up to,
6, yeah. That
I
way
would
and then we can show that you know, the school committee picked one school, and then they can move on from there.
what about putting it with 17 and 18, which has the other schools laid out in a similar way?
In the appendix?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I don't have numbers on my page.
the last two, so which
Oh, I
shows,
don't have
like,
that open.
the,
Okay, sorry.
estimated cost of one, estimated cost
Hold on, let me get down to the,
And then, I think on the flip side, because we use those to qualify slide 5, you could, I think you have it up here somewhere, you could, on slide 3, there's the disclaimer that the historic project costs are based on projects and are not an estimate. That sentence, you could put like a little asterisk on the bottom of 17 and 18 that says that. But how do you feel about moving slide 10 to a position before or after 17 and 18? Jenny?
I would, thank you for the suggestion. I certainly don't think it belongs in the appendix, because it is one of the, along with the slide 5, it's one of the pieces of material that we did consider.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
You know what I mean? And we don't have that represented in the main doc. So that's why I'm thinking if so they can compare the prices and then they can see, okay, based on this is what the school committee decided.
Okay, yes. So, I don't know if you're capturing all this, Sasha. What I'm hearing is move slide 10 to be after slide 5.
Okay.
And then you're going to delete the last 3 columns on what will,
could
on
we-
the one that you're on, yes.
Could we move all of those, because I appreciated that you had it in order in terms of all of the information related to model schools. So if we're going to swap it, I think then you're jumping from the 2, 5, and 6 to town sentiment, and then back into model school information. So I think town sentiment should go below all of those.
Oh, good call. Where are you at, Sasha? Do you want us to pause, or are you following
good.
along?
I got it.
All right.
The only town sentiment is part of our recap of what we discussed. The model school's a little new. That's fine.
Yeah, I think, because
We
it's
don't
still,
have to get stuck in it. Yeah. Okay, got it.
and, I mean, I guess that kind, if I may, it kind of explains itself. The model schools, the only bucket it really fits under is the cost. It
Yeah.
doesn't really fall into the other priorities that we identified. Okay, great work, guys. So where were we at?
Okay, so, not done.
We were at, would be.
Hit town sentiment, so now that's the closeout of the model school details. Slide 11, we wanted to share, part of what we've been doing is, I'll say due diligence and also feedback from the recommendations from the MSBA is to go do some site tours. So we saw Amesbury, Acton, Boxborough, and Gloucester. We just agreed to go see Swampscott in December, so wanted to list that as well. Highlight that, some of the work that we've done beyond what we've been discussing in this room.
Would it be wise to include department heads in those visits, just people who would be actually teaching? I know it gets in the hairy situation of like paying them overtime and stuff, but for a school for elementary teachers, I feel like it might be valuable to have their insight.
Outside of the specific, the visit, maybe I'll broaden and answer it in a little bit of a different way. One thing that is critically important to us is general feedback from not just the town, but the schools, and so administrators, educators in general. And so that's something we've regularly talked about, is how do we make sure we're getting that feedback? I don't know if the school visit is like the right thing. We tend to do those like during the day when they're in session.
Okay.
And that's also a little bit of a conflict.
Yeah.
The spirit of where you're going, making sure we're hearing from everybody, is absolutely something we've been doing.
Right, and just adapt it to like our school's needs, like elementary school. Music is huge. That requires a big space outside of a gym, because I know you have gym class at the same time.
I think that's what's been great about the visits, is we've been able to see some of those things and like those kind of key considerations. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sasha, one of the, and just before you go on, one of the things I thought of last night, midnight, when we were meeting, no, it wasn't really midnight, are a list of the takeaways that, like our goals for going to the schools. You know, things that we want to, the reason we're going, you know, is that like the feeling, the impression, so we can tell them why we're going. That way we can bring those back, that information back to the tri-board. And so I think that it would be helpful for them to know like what we're going to specifically look at.
Yeah, we prepared, when we did those school visits, we prepared the like, here are considerations going in, a little bit where you're going, Charlotte, like, when you go, look for these types of things,
Yeah.
consider this. I can add that here to say, when we went, here's what we looked for. That's a good add, so it's not just in general, we were like, oh, what colors did you paint the walls? kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, okay, that's a great add. That's gonna take me a minute to pull up, I won't edit that right here, but I will make the note to add that onto here.
Yeah.
And spinning with ideas.
And wanted to also make it a little bit real of, should we be accepted into the MSBA in December? What does a project look like? And so I pulled together the Swampscott Elementary timeline. Works out very nicely that that's what we're gonna go see, not that like it had to be, but built very recently. It is very close to the size and to the number of students, and it was a consolidation. And so we'll get a cultural aspect of it too, but that's so good
And
representation.
post a failed vote.
Post a failed vote.
The what?
Post a failed vote.
Oh.
Failed, then
Oh,
passed,
okay.
reapplied, yeah. Whole
So is the 2017 the
It is yes,
Yeah.
it is the second time they were accepted. Feasibility about 18 months. There is some pandemic timing, I would assume, in here. I don't know for sure. I would imagine that's the case. They break ground, and then they finish 7 years later. School opened this year.
Well, the groundbreaking to the new school opening was only 2 years, so that's really, really good.
Yeah, and so similar to what we've been saying, I think it's good to see historically what does it look like in the past, so we have a sense. I have heard, including from the boards, it's a 2-year from the time we get MSBA to when the kids are in the new building. I just want to
Set
clarify, like, it's not
expectations.
exactly 7 years, and it might be 8, and it might be 5, but like, we're in this zone, not in the 2.5 zone. So that's why, that was my intention of bringing this forward as
And
well.
And I may need to own part of that commentary, because when the failed vote happened in 17 for us, 18, that was at the tail end of the project. We could have been in a brand-new building in 2 years when COVID hit.
But the end-to-end is important,
So
and so
that was part of the narrative that I had said
Right.
along the way, so I went on that.
But I think what's important there is you're midway. That's why I wanted to do from MSBA to kids in seats
Yeah.
for them 7 years.
And then, so when, in this process, do you, say we're gonna do model school, we're gonna do our own school? Is that during the feasibility study? And so so Swampscott is a model school, right?
No.
It's not a model school. So if it was a model school, how shorter those 18 months would be?
On average, it's 85 days shorter.
85
so
days
it's about
shorter,
3 months. So it's about- That would have been
Gotcha.
about
3
15
months,
months.
yeah.
Okay.
Which,
So it's not a huge
They would have been
difference.
starting school in June.
not in,
Yeah.
See what I did there?
And then the last piece was next steps. I wanted everyone kind of coming out of tri-board, like, what does this year look like? Where are we going from here? And it's a little recap, but a couple of highlights. We're going to go see Swampscott potentially in December. We're going to hear back from the MSBA in December. That would bring us to beginning feasibility next year. Again, timing to be determined. And then we're going to keep saying it, similar to your question, Charlie, but like ongoing engagement with parents, educators, towns, boards, not just discussions, listening sessions, sharing information. That's critical as we move forward. And so we are literally talking about it every month, if not every meeting that we're here. So we'll keep that going. I want to make sure to continue to reiterate that, particularly with the tri-board.
I think something that you could add in between response from the MSBA and feasibility study should create a school building committee? Or should we put, does that matter? Because they're the ones who do the feasibility
Yes, I
study.
don't know the timing.
Oh, that would be in 2004.
Sort of where
Find
that
it,
fits in.
it's during the eligibility period.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me exactly
Okay.
the length of time, but yeah, because that is
Like a
select board.
bigger,
Yeah,
they're
I think that's-
major players in this.
Yeah, it's an important, because we've talked about that in terms of the community engagement and communication piece, and I think we're trying to be really intentional too about how much we do now ahead of that committee being formed, who's going to have their own big part of this, and for feasibility as well. So I think that's a really good suggestion.
All right, and then the appendix is all stuff from our workshops and everything. Okay, cool.
15 is listening session themes. We've seen that a few times. 16 is additional notes, some talking points, and then helpful links all to the MSBA site where all of this information comes from. Not easy to navigate, which is why I included the multiple links. And then 17, 18 is the specific data used in the numbers that are on page 5.
Thank you for adding that list.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you to your group, and I know you met very late last night.
I do have just two things. Going back to, now, slide 6. We talk about the model school costs. The spreadsheet that we had seen was Fairhaven was 442 enrollment, but here it says 370.
Let me look at my links at the bottom.
Alrighty.
I have noticed the MSBA site has two different numbers for a couple of schools, both in cost and enrollment,
Right.
and actually in square footage. Let me
Right.
check which one that's from to make sure we're as consistent as possible.
Yeah, and so it's the same as what we saw.
Yeah, good pickup.
Yeah, and
That
that
we
might have come
reviewed.
from, yes, I'll check which document I pulled it from, because they have two different numbers.
Okay.
I don't remember if it was that school, but I did notice that in other ones, and so I
Okay.
tried to make it at least as consistent with the other ones that we were pulling from.
Yeah, I feel like it should match the document that we saw. Yep. That's what we looked at, okay.
I think the old numbers were from, they put out like a memorandum of like, here's information you should know. And then separately, they have the full 2008 to 2014 data. These numbers, they're from that latter one, like the full compendium of all the school information.
Okay.
That's where those are from. Let me double check it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just send that to me. MSBA site is so crazy to me. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my
That's the link.
gosh.
So specifically
It's
for
like
this one,
pulling everything.
that's the two links at the bottom. They have a list
Yeah.
of pre-2014, post-2014. That's why there's the two links.
Okay.
There's the 2012 and the 2018 schools, but that's specifically the page where those numbers came from.
Okay, cool. And just the last thing that we spoke about, and I know you mentioned it, the non-reimbursable costs. I know you mentioned it when you were talking about model schools, which is fine if it's mentioned every time. But I think for sure it should be mentioned for the slide for 5. Like, it should be maybe talked about, yeah. Does it say?
Yeah, it's the same, and it's in the detail in the appendix. Yeah, I can mention it there, sure.
Yeah, just to, again, to set expectations of like, and that's common to have, because you want to build it towards the culture that you have in your town, which could mean a larger theater, could mean, something.
Yeah. Yes, and some of those are uncontrollable.
Yeah,
Right, like,
exactly.
we
So
talk
just so
about
they are,
You're close to wetlands. There's a whole other
Right.
host of costs
right,
that may not be reimbursed, but you
Right.
can't do anything about
Yeah, that's important to explain, I think,
Yeah, sure.
you know, those things.
The spreadsheet for the model schools that has the 442 for Fairhaven is in the 1017 number, so that may be
Is in the,
1017.
thank you.
And then would the model schools as they are have to be changed like dramatically in order to fit on the Doyon site, or would that be done during feasibility planning? Because if we do a model school and we realize, oh, well, this model school won't fit on the site, do we have to change it? Is it still a model
We
school?
determine that during feasibility.
Okay.
And I get to use my Lego analogy again. You don't take it and build it exactly identical. You do have, there is flexible opportunity based off of district need. So
Right.
we have options there.
Okay.
too. It doesn't apply to like, not full range options, but you do have flexibility. It
Right, I
is
just know that
not a
we're-
It is not exact cookie cutter copy.
We're just like so close to wetlands and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think, in my personal dig into this, like, it seems like that decision to pursue, or to continue on a model school program is in conjunction with the MSBA.
Oh, yeah, they're advising all of
Oh, I
us.
see.
sorry if that
Okay.
wasn't clear.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, That's
Okay.
not like we're not deciding.
Oh, so I didn't know if like you applied separately for
Yeah.
that.
They're
Okay, I
guiding
see.
so much of that.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
They do it for
Oh, that makes way more sense.
however
Okay.
many, dozens of schools a year, like.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I thought like you apply like as a model school or as a, we build your
No,
own.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You can signal that you're interested, and
Right.
like, again, during feasibility, and I mean, everything is in
Oh,
collaboration
so I thought
with
that's why like, there
them.
was a big drop off because people just stopped applying as model schools. I
I-
guess that, I mean,
yeah.
now it makes sense because you don't get the credits and stuff.
I couldn't
think
tell
it's
you
the
how many
fitting
looked into
need
it and decided not to, or
Right,
just
right.
decided not to look into it. You know, I don't know that we'll ever know that, but they have some documents that say, like, signal to us, like, it's very collaborative.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
All right, so a couple updates that I didn't make in real time that I noted. It's going to take me a second. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll do that. And then my recommendation as I open with is I'll make those final changes and ask that you share with the other boards ahead of time so they can be prepared. So the discussion is truly a discussion, not like me reading slides.
Great idea. Yep. Okay, yeah.
One last topic before we move away from elementary school buildings. The strategic planning committee
Oh, yes.
had asked about what numbers they should include. What we discussed last night was we felt comfortable with them using the numbers that they had prepared originally. We didn't feel like we were in a position or educated enough, as we just discussed, to project future numbers. What this strategic planning committee did was they took the school cost, the project cost from the 2018 building, and advanced it based on both construction costs and inflation to the year 2025. It is also, the numbers they came up with, I think it was right around 55, and one of our recommendations was use a round number. If their calculus came up to 52.7, don't use that because it indicates false precision. That the town might think that's exactly the number. Use a round number like 55, people are like, we get that you're in the range. So that was our guidance, but also make sure that they're clear about that. Especially because their estimate is based on multiple variables, which are hard to account for. But also, the number that they came up with is absolutely in the range of other recent elementary schools with similar size and enrollment. So it holds up. It is not on an island by itself. And so our recommendation is we don't come up with our own unique number, but that we are okay with what they put together.
I'm trying to pull it up. I believe that was a similar methodology to the last strategic plan.
Yeah, that is my understanding, and I have it here from Jim. They assume the same reimbursement rate, and in $2025, the cost to the town would be $60 million. So they did use exactly that round number for that reason. So our recommendation, we are comfortable with them continuing to use that, and then we regularly will have better information. We can continue to share that and refine that along the way. Is everybody comfortable with that? Yes, please.
Yes, I am. I just want to, again, caution, which, again, made sense, Diana, about taking those 3 columns off to go to 24. But I feel like that's the same, if you were to say it was this cost in 2018, then projecting it or bringing it to 2024 numbers, you run into the same thing. So instead of saying that anything was based on the 2018 numbers, you could just say, based on the information that other schools have, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to say, don't use it for this, which I get, but then to use that same 4% projection, or whatever you want to call it, to 2024.
Except this
So-
involves estimated construction costs and different elements than just an inflationary rate, right?
Yes.
How do we find that? Because that's beyond me.
Same.
All the
Yeah, we got,
Actually, Jim Engel did all the calculations and had them. So
the
that-
building costs and inflation and all that good stuff?
And I hear what you're saying, like 2018, so yeah, it's not like it was yesterday.
Right, and pandemic and,
2012 either, you know.
Right.
I think if we're going to do this same thing, you know, if we don't get in 5 years, we're looking at another strategic plan.
Right.
Probably
Yeah.
can't use it, and, you know, at some point. But
Right.
I think that's,
And I think
on my
that's
expertise.
important. It's a placeholder in a
Yes.
strategic plan weighed against the water mains that have to be replaced, the sewer mains that have to be replaced, the pump house, the roads.
so many
the-
things.
the eight- you know, the 17 things that are on that list. It's just a placeholder estimate for what a building
yeah,
might cost in some future year.
such a good point. And so our discussion last night and our recommendation here is we felt that that was directionally correct, and we're comfortable moving forward with that, and we'll continue to refine when we have better information.
And
I'm
the
hearing-
one thing that I did ask for clarity around last night was just that they would accept, in terms of communications or questions that they get moving forward, that the way they've responded in the past is to say that that was their placeholder, they were waiting for more information from us. So if we say we're comfortable with you continuing to use this as a placeholder, that
It's not like, you did this, you did that, you did this, back and forth like it was.
Sasha had said that Kate suspected that that would be fine, that they would be comfortable with that, as opposed to asking for more clarity, or that, as if something was still outstanding from us.
yeah.
I don't know
Well,
if I
that's the-
articulated
No,
that
that's
well.
exactly
Getting
right.
tired.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that Kate brings that, and if they have questions or further discussion, we'll do that.
Yeah, and I like what you said. I think we feel comfortable that's directionally correct.
Yeah,
We are not,
is
we
not
don't have a
accurate.
crystal ball.
I don't
It
think
is
they would
not
say it is either.
specific.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, terrific.
great.
That's
Lots
it.
of work
Thank you.
done. Well done.
lot.
Thank you,
I was
guys.
about to leave.
Thank you.
We still more to go.
Almost.
Sorry, no, that's fine.
All right,
Business.
new business. No? I'm hearing none. All right, consent agenda. Let me pull it up. All right, so we are going to move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the meeting minutes from October 17th, 2024 and October 22nd, 2024. And number two, authorize to pay prior year's invoices. I move that the school committee authorize the director of finance to pay prior year's outstanding invoices utilizing FY 2025 appropriated budget funds.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jen, second by Jenny. Further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously, 6-0. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, such a raise. Jen, Haley, all in favor? All right.
Somebody would get there at 9:59.
Ipswich, and it is 10 o'clock.
On the dot. Yeah. Well done.
I don't know.
Got a lot done, though.
Yeah. That's good. Productive.